OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It's 7:30. You're very welcome along to Monday's OTB AM. It's Eoin and Nathan with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning. We're going to have Alan Quinlan with us a little bit later on to pick through a couple of disappointing results for the Irish provinces in the URC. We'll have Anthony Moyles with us in studio to react to the quarter-final draw in the All-Ireland Football Championship, which is taking place a little bit later on this morning. And of course, we'll be chatting plenty about the Republic of Ireland. Gavin Cooney is in Poland and we'll be crossing over to him before tomorrow night's game against Ukraine. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on Saturday. Are you getting carried away on this wave of emotion that we saw after a brilliant 3-0 win against Scotland, or are you very much saying let's just wait and see how things go in Poland tomorrow night? You can tweet us at Off The Ball or comment on the YouTube stream if that's where you're getting us. Nathan, you were one of those people who got to witness this great performance on Saturday. Have you managed to come down off that high yet, or were you never up there anyway?
Oh no, I was up there.
Yeah.
I was right up there. I've been right up there all weekend, from Michael Obafemi, Oisin Mullen, Rory McIlroy. Whew.
Your Mount Rushmore.
Couldn't sleep last night. I was buzzing.
This is like a star-studded Nathan Murphy weekend. I couldn't think of anything going better for you.
No, it was magic right from the off. Of course I'm getting carried away with the Republic of Ireland. Doesn't everybody? Like, this is the extremes. We'll do our power rankings in a moment. Every time the Republic of Ireland play, they're always going to be in red or green, unless they've their traditional 1-1 draw away from home. But yeah, it was a great day at Lansdowne Road on Saturday. The sun was shining, the stadium was pretty much packed, and scored some absolutely sensational goals. Like the second and third goal were, as we keep saying, very un-Irish, which is maybe doing ourselves down a little bit, but the quality of the second goal, and then just the brilliance of Michael Obafemi, and getting to talk to him afterwards. Like, what a likeable young man. Just a brilliant personality. Somebody, you know, Irish football could sort of hang their hat on in terms of being an inspiration over the next few years if he can manage to stay fit. So, yeah, good weekend all round. Ireland win, Mayo get the job done, and Rory McIlroy sticks it to the man.
The man being Greg Norman, of course, in this case. We're all just very proud that he's gone one clear of Greg Norman at this moment. We will have plenty of Rory, we will have plenty of Mayo in the performance rankings, and as I say, Ireland. But you were talking to Michael Obafemi afterwards. You put it to him that it was the best goal you've ever seen at the Aviva Stadium, probably since the assist for the Troy Parrott goal at the Aviva Stadium. But what other goals are in the conversation here? Did you do like a quick...
God damn it all, you've really put me on the spot now.
I'm sure as like a professional journalist you were like thinking to yourself, I have to have my facts together here and have a little...
Well, best goal isn't factual, it's opinion own.
Yeah, of course.
Well, the obvious one, because while I think Michael Obafemi's quality-wise was unquestionably the best goal at the Aviva Stadium, context is obviously always massive importance. So Shane Long against Germany.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it had the finish as well. It looked beautiful on TV, and it had the importance of beating the best side in the world at the time. Other great goals. Darren Gibson scored one, didn't he? He scored from a long-distance strike many years ago. Was it against Wales, maybe in the Carling Nations Cup? Trying to think of the long-distance strikes that Ireland have scored.
Or conceded. I'm thinking Azerbaijan and Luxembourg here. Yeah.
So you're thinking we're doing down the Azerbaijanis and the...
Of course, we're always doing them down.
By not
have enough respect.
I still think Obafemi's was far better than both of those.
Yeah.
He's exactly 30 yards out. You can see when the ball hits the back of the net, it bounces all the way out of the penalty area again, such is the power. And he'd never scored a goal in his entire career from outside the penalty area before.
Right.
Which is a remarkable statistic. He says himself he's a goal poacher, and we haven't really seen that from him so far in the couple of appearances that he's had. He hasn't had too many opportunities inside the area. His link-up play was brilliant. But just the venom that he hit that shot with, there was absolutely nothing the goalkeeper could do. This was a top tier goal. So absolutely, I am going with this as the best goal scored at the Aviva Stadium.
Colm just said into my ear that it's objectively the best goal ever scored at the Aviva Stadium. So that is that settled. There's no opinion about it. Michael Obafemi, best goal ever at the new Lansdowne Road. It is 7:34. You're with us here on OTB AM. It's brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Coming up over the next little while, we'll have the performance rankings coming your way in just a second. Gavin Cooney is in Poland. He'll chat to us ahead of tomorrow night's game against Ukraine. The sports news coming your way at 8:35, and we'll bring you news of that quarter-final draw in the All-Ireland Football Championship at that point. Then we'll have Alan Quinlan with us at 10 to 9 to talk about the URC semi-finals. Anthony Moyles with us in studio studio at 9:10, and then more reaction from yesterday's show from David Snade on that win for the Republic of Ireland over Scotland yesterday. Now, as I say, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs, and it is time for the Gillette Labs performance rankings right now.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Every week we're giving away a Gillette Labs shaving kit, and to be in with a chance of winning, just let us know who you think should make the performance rankings. The best place to enter is the Off the Ball Instagram page. You'll see the comments box on our story every Sunday evening. Nathan, you are guiding us through these this morning. We'll go from the bad right away through to the good. So where are we starting?
I'm in your seat, Owen. There's a lot of pressure. We're going to start in the red. GAA scheduling. Sky Sports couldn't distance themselves quickly enough from the scheduling of the two qualifiers in Croke Park on Saturday. I couldn't find an official attendance figure, but it looked to be abysmal, and there is no place worse in the world than Croke Park in a not even half empty. Was it a quarter full? It really didn't feel like it. And it was nonsensical. We all knew this was going to happen. We all knew this from last Monday when these fixtures were scheduled. Why are you dragging these four counties to Dublin? An assumption that the Mayo supporters will travel no matter what. Like, we are in a fuel crisis. The price of petrol has never been higher. It's impossible to get a hotel in Dublin on a weekend like this. There was Dermot Kennedy on Friday night. So Duran was on last night. We had Ireland against Scotland on Saturday as well. And the expectation that these supporters will just keep on travelling with all the expense involved for a match at Croke Park that was never going to take off. Why not have this in Tullamore or Portlaoise or even the Hyde Park or somewhere where you have 20,000, 25, maybe even you get 30,000 where people can just rock up for the day, park up, pay their fiver in the field. But to have it in Croke Park has backfired yet again. And even from a Mayo point of view, I could tell towards the end of last week, I didn't know anyone travelling up. And I don't think that was we presume that Mayo will win, though I think there was a bit of, if Mayo do win, they're going to be back here in 2 weeks' time, and there might be an All-Ireland semi-final as well to come quickly after that. And also, Mayo have been in Dublin to play Dublin in the league. They've been in Dublin for the league final, and now they're back again. And listen, it was clear the Mayo players were very keen to play in Croke Park, and the management were happy with that, but it needs to be about more than that. It needs to be about what dragging Clare supporters up. Clare supporters, more of them deserve to see that victory, like a momentous victory. And I know it was important for them to win in Croke Park and all of that, but we got to get this right. We cannot. It's killing the product. These are big games. These are final round qualifiers. These are important matches that should be played with an atmosphere. And we saw the benefits of that yesterday with Tyrone and Armagh in Clones, which again is a big stadium. Can hold up on 40,000 in Clones. But when you have a stadium that is nearly full, it was enjoyable to watch on TV because it felt like it meant something, whereas obviously the two games on Saturday meant the exact same, but it didn't feel like it.
Yeah, definitely. Like I do think obviously that there's obviously something going on here, that they need to get games played in Croke Park. I'm not sure, is it down to maybe people who have premium tickets who need to have a certain amount of games every year or something like that, or they're trying to claw some of those games back for those patrons, if we can call them that, after COVID. Maybe that's one of the things that you could use to explain it. But I don't think these games should be played in Croke Park, but nor should the quarterfinals be played in Croke Park. Like if Mayo come out of the hat this morning and draw a Kerry or a Dublin, maybe Dublin you play that in Croke Park, but do you really want to play that Kerry game in Croke Park? Is there a certain other provincial ground that famously held a game between those two that would give you a better atmosphere? And I think that goes for all those potential matchups. I think maybe the only possible matchup in that quarterfinal that you'd really want to see in Croke Park is Mayo against Dublin. Everything else would be better served by being outside of Croke Park. What I will say is that
it's going to be, if whoever Dublin get, it's going to be in Croke Park.
Yes, well, sorry, they're all four games are going to be in Croke Park.
But again, it doesn't make any sense, like dragging Derry down if it's Derry against Armagh, having that in Croke Park.
Yeah, well, we know it's going to be fixed for Croker. That's not going to change. That's definitely where the games are going to happen the weekend after next. Jared Markham has been in touch to say they bring the hurling quarterfinals at Hurles, which should be in Croke Park, and now there will be a scramble for tickets. Are they? I think the situation with that is better than the football, where you do have two cracking games on. The only issue there is that they're on the same ticket, isn't it? Like,
what's the problem with there being a scramble for tickets?
Well, like, you could just play them on separate days. Like, there's a double header in Thurles, one at 1:45, one at 3:45 this Saturday. Could you potentially have played one of them on Sunday? I may be missing something there in terms of, you've got I think the minor game is actually on Gaelic grounds on Saturday, and maybe there's another minor game in Semple on Friday as well. I'm not sure what the makeup is there. Maybe there's a reason for having them back to back, and maybe it's because they want to keep the Tailteann Cup semi-finals in their own place on Sunday. But anyway, that's kind of like a small conversation around that. I think Thurles for the quarterfinals in the hurling is really good. What I did take away from Saturday, though, is that what we did get were actually two really good games that I really enjoyed. And yes, you can absolutely feel a lack of atmosphere from the stadium, but you do kind of forget about it when you're saying, oh, hold on here, Clare have a penalty in injury time. You do forget about it when the second half of Mayo versus Kildare is just unbelievably chaotic. Wasn't necessarily packed with quality, but it was mad. It was absolutely mad. It was as mad as Newbridge was in 2018 as a television, not as a television spectacle, but as a game. And you do forget about that for a minute. And I do genuinely believe that the 4 games that we got, the weekend of football that we got, was the best of the year. And it's a bit unfortunate that, I guess, one of the main things about it is that there'll be a lot of Mayo fans and a lot of Clare fans. And to be fair, it goes for the Roscommon fans as well, that just didn't make the journey because, they live on the other side of the country and it's just bloody expensive to go up and watch a game in a cavernous stadium. But at least the Kildare fans, I guess, were served relatively well, which is all that matters.
Were they? They enjoyed their day out?
Yeah, they certainly did. We'll come back to this in just a moment because we'll get stuck into Mayo and the games. But second up in the red in our performance rankings this morning is regarding the URC.
Yes, the URC final, the one we've all dreamed of, the Bulls against the Stormers. Yeah, a bit of a shock to the system for Irish rugby over the weekend. Leinster beaten on Friday night. Ulster just about edged out on Saturday, and quite the post-mortem I would expect for Leinster after this game. Nobody was quite expecting. I think the Bulls were maybe 14-1 to beat Leinster, so it was a heck of a shock. And while it was a 1-point game in the end, the game was obviously done quite a few minutes before that. And Leinster end the season trophyless for the first time in 5 seasons. Question marks about their physicality again after a couple of years against Saracens, a couple of years now against La Rochelle. That the arrival of the South African teams into the URC and now from next season into the Champions Cup as well, that Leinster need to find something different. It was interesting listening to Leo Cullen after the game describing it as squeeze rugby, admitting that they were outpowered, but said it's not really in our DNA. And that's a conversation that's going to happen in Leinster over the course of the summer, because it's not like they score an insane amount of tries on those regular Friday night URC games where I think most people have felt that the URC hasn't served Leinster pretty well because they've been so far ahead of everybody else, scoring over 4 tries on average in every single URC game this season. But do you now have to alter your plans because of the arrival of the South Africans? And I think that's already in train. Like, I've rarely seen Leo Cullen as excited as when he's been talking about Jason Jenkins coming in. And a lot of people would think Jason Jenkins is not exactly a superstar, but he is a big boy. And Leo Cullen obviously sees something there that he's going to be able to be an impact player in matches like this. But maybe a bit of a shock for Leinster, for Irish rugby in general, what's gone on over the last few weeks.
I think the URC is in green, though, after those. Anybody winning as a 14-1 underdog in a semi-final represents a good competition. The drama at the end of the Ulster game was absolutely mad. I think it's the Irish provinces really that should be in the red this morning. What you have all of a sudden now next year is Leinster going up against the South African teams with a sense of narrative around it. That just didn't exist over the last little while because these rivalries were brand new. The rivalries did not exist. And now all of a sudden you've got a team who are kind of ripping the Leinster game plan apart a little bit and saying this is how we're going to beat you, and doing so successfully. Like Cullen did say that there was a commonality between the La Rochelle defeat, the Saracens defeats, and now the defeat at the weekend as well. So there is a theme emerging here that we thought had been corrected somewhat by Leinster this year, but it clearly hasn't. And I mean, they'd completed the signing of Jason Jenkins long before these defeats started to happen for them. So maybe even inside the camp they realised that there was a little bit of extra work they needed to do in terms of heft. But it is a little bit deja vu, isn't it? This conversation that we have around Irish rugby where I know it's not Ireland, but it is essentially Ireland. Leinster getting beaten in that way over the last little while, and just this question of heft. And maybe New Zealand won't be a rude awakening for the Ireland rugby team this summer. Maybe Ireland might win a test down there next month. But it does feel that the last couple of weeks have been a little bit of an edging towards the alarm button when it comes to Irish rugby. The sort of concerns that people would have had around the power, they haven't gone anywhere. And it would be very, very interesting to see what would happen if Ireland came up against a South Africa in the morning, for example, with these.
Well, they will later in the year, so we get a proper sense of it then. Like a question of the heft, and I think listening to Bernard Jackman as well, a question about the depth of this Leinster squad. They used up on 60 players this season, and I often feel this when we're doing the depth chart around Ireland as well. Like, real depth is that you can replace one player with another player, and there's not a great difference in quality. And it seems, from looking at the way Leinster have used that squad over the last week, that maybe the management aren't convinced that there isn't a big difference in terms of quality. Bernard Jackman outlined it yesterday in the pay-per-view, the amount of players in the pack who are coming on just too late in games, like in the last couple of minutes where you're just throwing them on, whereas you compare to La Rochelle, who had a set game plan in advance to say exactly when they were going to make their changes to the pack. So why don't Leinster trust these players? Questions as to why Devon Toner wasn't playing, and considering the problems they've had in the line-out, and even though he's leaving the province was a decision made because he's on his way out, that somehow we're still building towards the future here. There's a lot of players in that Leinster squad who we think are set for superstardom, but again, maybe we've all just got a bit carried away with some of these younger players.
I would be curious to see as well if Leinster had beaten La Rochelle, which could easily have happened, and had they got through Friday night, would we be having these conversations at all? And I'm sure
that is the reason we're having them, is that these are the defining games of your season. That part of the problem with the URC has been that Leinster win so many matches so comfortable, it's hard to judge exactly where they are. So these are the games where those young players have to perform, and Sexton is on the bench on Friday night. Does it underline again that Sexton has to start these big games? Is it a real concern again that if Sexton's not there, that Ross Byrne, that Harry Byrne, that they're still not ready to go and take a game like this, a semi-final in the URC, and to control it? So I think it'll leave a lot of questions for Leinster. Not that the players have much time to think about this. I'm sure a lot of them will be in Andy Farrell's squad, and they're flying out either next Sunday night or next Monday to New Zealand, so there's not too much time to lick their wounds.
Edward Freeman has been in touch to say Leinster weren't overpowered on Friday. Their scrum was stronger. The problem was the line-out was cleaned out. They couldn't get any decent possession in the second half, which is interesting when you listen to the Squeeze Rugby comment from Leo Cullen, that he did kind of accept that analysis, that there is a little bit of a strength conversation there. And he actually referred back to the Lions tour of last summer, when this was a real topic of conversation around every match. Was, this is the way rugby is played at the moment. South Africa were leaders at it. It may not be pretty, but get used to it. It's winning rugby. And I think that he was kind of alluding to that on Friday night himself. And MOC says the tour to New Zealand looks like a damp squib now. James Ryan is not a captain. And Dave Cos says Leinster hubris are the champions. We'll be getting Alan Quinlan's thoughts on all of that at around 10 to 9 this morning. Most importantly, though, we have got Mayo covered this morning on the performance rankings. They're in amber, Nathan.
I put Mayo in green till, it finally happens. They're just going to stay in orange. They were in orange last Monday. They're in orange this Monday. And understandably so, because they have progressed once again. They have managed to win another qualifier against another decent team, but have done so probably raising more questions than answers. This wasn't a vintage Mayo performance. It's been probably put up there as one of their worst performances in Croke Park. Yet still, they managed to come through and win that game. And even when Kildare were in total control, there's always that sense with Mayo that a bounce is coming, that they will somehow grind their way through this. So I'd be interested to hear what Anthony Moyles thinks. I don't know anyone who quite knows where Mayo are right now. It doesn't feel as though they're anywhere near as where they've been over the last decade, yet they're back in an All-Ireland quarter-final once again. And I think a huge amount depends on the draw. The way the draw's worked out, Mayo can't play Galway, so there's 2 out of 3 chance they end up against Kerry or Dublin in a quarter-final, which then means in all likelihood you have to play the other one in a semi-final. And whichever team ends up in that position, or whichever 2 teams end up on that side of the draw, it's a huge challenge to beat one, never mind to go and beat the 2 of them in back-to-back games. So Mayo need to find something. Like, the only reason I think anyone has belief still in Mayo, it's not based on the performances over the last couple of weeks. It's just that they've always managed to find a way over the last decade to win games, grind it out. And even going back to the Galway match, again, where they were so poor for 45, 50 minutes, when the stakes were at their highest, they played their best football in those last 10 minutes of the game. All right, missed a kick at the end to get a draw and send it to extra time. But when it really matters in the closing stages of games, they still seem to be able to pull out their best football. But it needs to improve rapidly, because if you end up against Derry, Dublin or Kerry, that game will be over at half-time.
Predicting a draw is a really stupid thing to do, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway and predict that Mayo are going to draw Derry this morning, and it's going to be Mayo against Dublin or Kerry in a final, and it'll be the same as it ever was, and Mayo will find their way to the final once again.
I take it. Right now I take it.
So the big question I have for you is that in April 2020 you put Cora Staunton, Lee McHale, Kevin Kilban and Kieran MacDonald on your Mayo Mount Rushmore. How close is Lee Keegan to knocking one of them off that mountain?
Well, I did the first Mount Rushmore, and mistakes were made. Let's hold our hands up there. I was probably too personal about it. Lee McHale was my favourite Mayo player growing up. I heard Mossy Quinn say he's Mayo's greatest ever player, and I think most people would agree that he probably is now Mayo's greatest ever player. Kieran MacDonald is, I don't want to say he's just a cult hero, because he was way, way more than that, and maybe he's Mayo's most skillful ever player. But I think what Lee Keegan has achieved on big occasions in All-Ireland finals, how he has been able to play his own game all the time and counter the man he's marking, and the longevity that he's had as well, and to still be, it seems, at the absolute peak of his powers at this stage, he has to be up there. And I think it's probably a done deal now that Lee Keegan is Mayo's greatest ever player. Yeah.
Wow. That's... You've heard it here, so that is changing your Mount Rushmore then. That is like...
Love Lee McHale, though.
Yeah. Still love Lee McHale, of course.
But you see, Lee, in terms of Mount Rushmore, obviously McHale got in because of the basketball and the football. So what we're coming to is Kilban. I'm going to have to think about this.
And sorry, one last question then. Who do you want at 8:30 this morning?
Derry.
You want Derry, okay.
Absolutely.
Was that a stupid question? I mean, the Derry people here would
the draw is, it's similar to, was it the 2018 World Cup, where suddenly around the quarterfinal stage everyone looked, or even the last 16 stage, went, whoa, all of the strongest teams are on one side of the draw and a lot of the mid-ranking teams are the other. So we're going to get a team that nobody at the start of the season was really expecting in an All-Ireland final there. So depending on how this draw goes, we will obviously know exactly what the run through for the rest of the season is, that if you end up on the opposite side to Dublin and Kerry, and this isn't being disrespectful because all these teams you feel seem on a similar-ish level, and maybe Mayo even aren't on the level of Galway and Derry right now, but I think any team that sees themselves on the other side of the draw to Dublin and Kerry will feel there's a massive opportunity to squeeze themselves into an All-Ireland final.
I think if you manage to get Mayo, Derry, Armagh and Galway on the one side of the draw, all of those four counties will be thinking middle of July we're going to the All-Ireland final. There'll be an absolute chance for them, and that's like a brilliant element of what's happened over the last little while, that it is a little bit lopsided. C-Mark's been in touch to say, why are Clare footballers not in green? Joke. And I mean, Keelan Sexton should probably be in the green for his performance, 1-1 in the last 5 minutes.
Well, I don't know how you go about
comeback.
This. I have to apologise, obviously, this is your gig at the performance rankings that you never, ever get wrong.
Yeah.
And I got absolutely hammered last week because I didn't have the Munster hurling final in green.
There was a good game of hurling that you didn't compliment. You're not allowed to do that.
I apologise.
It's rule number one of performance rankings.
People.
Always give hurling credit.
I thought, you see, that what happened with the performance ranking is you put in all the stuff that we weren't going to talk about later. So I left out Clare and I left out Armagh out of green because I assume we're going to talk about them in depth with Anthony Moyles a little bit later. And neither of them deserve to be an orange. Mayo deserve to be an orange.
They do. Mayo are the living embodiment of orange. Shane says, why is Donegal not in the red? It's a very good question as well, Shane. Donegal, one of the most, I would say one of the greatest underachievers over the last few years in Gaelic football, but the players that they have, even yesterday, there was kind of like an underachievement within the game. The madness of their collapse is actually spectacular. We will dive deep into it a little bit later on with Anthony Moyles, but their story since that 2014 semi-final win against Dublin has been pretty interesting. Like, they've never made it back to a semi-final since that point, and you really do feel that that's a team with the quality to be back into the semi-final and maybe even make it to a final. And perhaps they are the example of why the provincial championships really are screwed, is that they've had a tougher path than most every single year, and they've suffered as a result of it. Maybe not. Maybe it's all internal, and maybe they could have done a lot more themselves to try and get over the line in a couple of those big games over the last little while. And then really the only other thing to mention from the Gaelic football weekend is, of course, Armagh, which we'll get to a little bit later on. I think if Armagh come out of the bowl on the side of Galway and Derry this morning, I think Rian O'Neill is in the conversation for Footballer of the Year, because I think there's a very, very real chance that he'll make it to a final if they come out on that side of the draw. I'm not saying they will make it, but there's a very good chance.
Better than David Clifford.
Well, I think that there's every chance that David Clifford gets taken out in an All-Ireland quarter-final or semi-final, potentially. Semi-final.
Oh, this is proper Yeraism, even ahead of the draw. You're saying that the four counties in this draw are so cynical, they're going to try and take David Clifford out of the game.
Yes, let's go with that. Yeah, that's exactly what
outrageous
I said.
Slur. It's outrageous.
I think that there's just a live possibility if you're looking to predict Footballer of the Year.
Take David Clifford out of the game.
I think wait till you see half eight and see if Rian O'Neill manages to avoid Dublin and Kerry. I think there's a chance he could be the Footballer of the Year this year, but it's just an outside shot. We've got a couple of things to go through in the green, because there were some good news stories from the weekend, Nathan.
Yes, Rory McIlroy in the green. Victory last night at the Canadian Open. He won it in 2019. It was cancelled for a couple of years because of COVID, so it's actually the first time he's ever defended a title, and it was a brilliant final round. It couldn't have worked out better in terms of entertainment for the PGA Tour, who are in the midst of this war with LIV Golf, and they couldn't have a better frontman right now than Rory McIlroy, who, as well as being still, I think, the biggest star relevancy-wise, with Tiger Woods not playing much golf, has also sort of become this moral champion for golf, and it seems to sit very comfortably on his shoulders. On the golf, they had a final pairing of Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy and Tony Finau, so three huge names, and the scoring was incredibly low. At one stage it looked like Justin Rose may shoot the first ever 57 on the PGA Tour. In the end he had a bogey on 18 for 60. McIlroy and Thomas shot the lights out again. At one stage we thought both of them might be going for a 59, and McIlroy, over that closing stretch of 5 or 6 holes, there were some nervy moments, particularly as he sort of went down 15, 16. His driving started to let him down, hit a couple of drives way left, missed a couple of 3-footers on the green, but his wedge play was exceptional all week, and particularly yesterday. It's an area of his game that a lot of people have felt has held him back hugely over the last couple of years, that when he's anywhere sort of between 125, 160, 70 yards, that he's just not close enough, and that when you look at his putting stats, actually part of the issue is that he's just leaving himself with too much to do on the greens compared to other top players. But on 17 and 18, he more than delivered the goods, and throughout yesterday's round, his wedge play was as good as I've ever seen from McIlroy, and he just about held off the challenge of Justin Thomas, who faded and made a mess of 17 and of 18. So Rory wins, which is huge from a pure golfing point of view, because we are in US Open week. It's at Brookline just outside Boston. It all gets underway on Thursday. So Rory's going in on a huge wave of momentum. He did win this, as I say, back in 2019, and he finished inside the top 10 at the US Open that year. But you would hope that actually he can go a little bit closer this time. And obviously he showed at the Masters that maybe his first round yips are out of the way a little bit, but he now has to deal with the expectation that goes with winning last night. At the other side, and another reason why Rory McIlroy just always says the right thing. Just always says the right thing. So last night was his 21st victory on the PGA Tour, which in itself is a huge achievement. Moved him past a certain Greg Norman on the all-time list. And Rory wasn't going to... I thought these are the sort of stats that I like. Turns out Rory was well aware of this stat as well, Eoin.
Yeah, let's have a listen. Silence is the real killer for Greg Norman, it turns out. That Rory McIlroy just mic dropped.
Wow.
Do you want to do your best Rory impression and tell us what he said?
You see, if you try and do a Rory impression, you automatically end up in GMAC. Isn't that the problem?
We'll get to that clip in just a moment, but let's just say it was a bit of an incentive for Rory McIlroy that he was in a position to go one clear of Greg Norman's career winnings of.
I couldn't believe it. I don't know why I'm surprised, because this has been Rory. He'll always say what's on his mind and won't really worry about the consequences too much. But it was just, it was a complete shots fired moment.
We try that clip again.
Amanda, it's all yours.
Rory, on a week where you have emphasized how important it is for you to play against the world's best, what does this win in this scene mean to you?
Yeah, it's incredible. Playing with Tony and JT today, two of the top players in the world, and all of us playing the way we did. I mean, I think the worst score of the group was 6 under par. Yeah, this is a day I'll remember for a long, long time. 21st PGA Tour win, one more than someone else. That gave me a little bit of extra incentive today, and happy to get it done.
Justin Thomas as well was tweeting with a winky face after the number 21 as well on Twitter yesterday. So you can imagine the conversations that are being had behind closed doors between the likes of Justin Thomas and Rory McIlroy about Greg Norman at the moment. Today though, the big thing, I think 6 o'clock, Phil Mickelson is in front of the press, 6 o'clock Irish time. That is going to be pretty interesting, because he doesn't necessarily always do media before majors, certainly early in the week, and there's only going to be one thing that people are going to be asking him about, and this seems to be quite a pinch point as well, the majors and the acceptance of LIV golfers at the majors. This is going to be a very interesting couple of days of a build-up to Brookline.
Well, everybody's on a bit of a high who feels that the best players should stay in the PGA Tour because of having such a brilliant finale to the Canadian Open. Even the scenes with the crowd gathered around the 18th green, the chants of ole ole, just in stark contrast to what we saw in England yesterday, or on Saturday for the final round of LIV Golf, where it just felt like a complete irrelevance. People had lost interest by the time it got to Saturday. Charles Schwartzel actually won 4 million quid first prize, the biggest first prize in the history of golf. But I think when things start to settle down, it's been a good week for LIV Golf in terms of their aims to basically take over the game of golf. They got through the first week, with some teething problems, and Phil Mickelson could be interesting because every press conference so far has been a bit of a shit show, let's be honest. Graham McDowell has done himself what feels like irreparable damage with what he has had to say over the past couple of weeks. But the likelihood is that by the time they get to Portland, Oregon at the end of June for the next LIV Golf event, that they could have 16, 17, 18 of the top 50 in the world. So you have a massive split, and you are less likely to have the type of scenes that you had last night, where you have the best players in the world in the final group. Now, at the moment, it doesn't look as though any of the top 10 in the world are going to go, and maybe all the negativity will have an impact. Like Harold Varner, who's not a huge name, he's top 50 in the world rankings, was one of those who was initially seen to be a definite to go to LIV Golf. There have been a lot of reports that he's having second thoughts now because he's seen the backlash that has come towards the players, and probably doesn't want that moment where he has to sit in front of the media and give that explanation as to why he's taking this money. But the PGA Tour haven't responded to this in a particularly strong way. Yeah, they came out and they banned the players and said anyone who goes isn't going to be welcome on the PGA Tour, but that was sort of the least they could do. And part of their problem is it's not a fair fight here. Like, they can respond by trying to increase prize money, and I'm sure they will, and the rich will get richer on the PGA Tour as well, as they have done already over the past 24 months because of the interest from LIV Golf. But LIV Golf have invested $1-2 billion on this, and they don't look like they're going to slow down. So the PGA Tour, if LIV Golf decide to go and offer Rory McIlroy $500 million, which you'd imagine he will, the only thing they can rely on is that Rory McIlroy morally doesn't want to go and take that money and feels that his legacy is built on the PGA Tour. And we've now seen them go down a different route. Jay Monaghan, who's the commissioner, has been interviewed last night and was going down the patriotism route. So it came out in the middle of last week that the 9/11 Families Group had written a letter to all the top US stars asking them not to play in this because of the strong Saudi connections to 9/11. And Jay Monaghan, basically that was his main point in his interview last night to try and keep players was, have you ever had to apologise for being a PGA Tour player? And I went down the route of, I know families, I've had friends who lost people in 9/11, and these are difficult conversations to have. So to try and tug on the heartstrings of these players, but it seems clear that anyone I've heard who played in LIV Golf, like, there isn't an ounce of remorse or regret or consideration for anything but the amount of money that they're getting. And like Phil Mickelson did a press conference last week and sort of laughed his way through things. I would expect it'll be something similar, and like, this week's going to be fascinating in some ways. Will there be, I can't imagine there will be, like, will there be any bit of a negative reaction towards Phil or Dustin Johnson? And also, there's definite possibility that one of the LIV golfers wins the US Open. Like, Dustin Johnson is still one of the best golfers in the world right now. Maybe Dustin Johnson can go and win this week, and what will that mean for them?
That would be quite the scene. A few people in touch asking about if LIV players are allowed to play at the US Open. They are this week.
They are for now. They are this year. They said, listen, we don't feel that as a US Open we should change our rules for players who have qualified. But I think they've left it open. And listen, LIV Golf, may have weighed this up and looked at the 4 majors and thought, are they going to unify in a stance alongside the PGA Tour? At the moment, it doesn't look like they will. There's been no indication, really, from the PGA Tour or from the majors that they will ban the players from LIV Golf. And, there's a lot of speculation as to what's going on with the European Tour. We still don't know. We haven't heard at all from the European Tour. So this is going to run and run. But while it was a very, very good night for the PGA Tour and a reminder of how great the PGA Tour can be, it's not a perfect entity in any way, but it gives us that brilliant Sunday night entertainment. And I do always feel sorry for Americans, because Sunday night, it's a real... Obviously, in this part of the world, it's Sunday night, but in America, it's like 4 o'clock It's like 4 o'clock. But it's perfect Sunday night relaxation for us. We're just on the couch having a good time watching this. They sort of miss out on that, don't they?
Yeah, poor Americans. Absolutely, yeah, bloody hell. I never really thought of it like that, Nathan, it turns out. The last thing in our performance rankings this morning is the Republic of Ireland, which we'll stick with over the next half an hour or so. Any top line from Saturday that we haven't touched on just yet that stuck out to you, Nathan?
This was a pivotal game for Stephen Kenny. I felt ahead of kickoff that we'd know a lot as to where we were going at the full-time whistle and the crowd's reaction, that if it hadn't gone well, again, there's ways of losing games, and if it hadn't gone well and Ireland had lost in disastrous fashion, if there were boos ringing out the Aviva, we could be heading towards an end game pretty quickly. It couldn't have been more different from that. It was absolute jubilation. The tightness of the players was there straight away. The second the full-time whistle went, all of them into a huddle. They went off in a lap of honour. A huge crowd stay behind. Stephen Kenny, I think he looked a little bit emotional because, again, hasn't had too many days like this, certainly in front of a packed Aviva Stadium. And all round it was a really good performance. There were some sloppy bits in the first half that could have given Scotland an opportunity, and if John McGinn takes one of those chances, we could be having a very different conversation this morning. But Ireland got the first goal, and that really felt key to this. Yeah, it was the one scrappy goal, and Alan Brown pops up in the right place again. But that just seemed to ease a little bit of pressure on everybody. And remember, against Ukraine, Ireland started well in the first 50 minutes, and in Armenia played well in the first 45, but couldn't score. So actually getting a goal and scoring 3 goals at home. I think it's 1989 is the last time Ireland scored 3 goals at home against a team ranked higher than them in a competitive game. Hadn't won a competitive game in 3 years since a match against Gibraltar. So, yeah, Scotland were great, and probably... Andy Robertson was way, way off where you would expect him to be. And McTominay had no great influence in the game. But they're still a decent team. So this is a performance that Ireland need to build from now. They've got a very tough game tomorrow night against what we expect will be a full-strength Ukraine. And they're now missing, unfortunately, several players from Saturday as well. But this is what people thought they were buying into when Stephen Kenny became manager. Young, youthful, exciting, attacking team, playing a good quality of football in possession. Like the quality of the second goal, like Troy Parrott's involvement gets somewhat overshadowed by Obafemi, but he goes up, he wins the initial ball, and then he doesn't just stop and wait. He makes that charging run through. And Obafemi's little dink over the top was just sensational. And for Parrott to have made the run and followed up is exactly what you want. And even then, like the balls and the bravery to take on the shot for the third goal. How often have you seen an Irish attacker drop deep like that? And they take the simple option. They roll it out to the right-hand side. The cross is whipped in. It's cleared out of play. You get a corner kick and everyone's happy with that. So, yeah, some people will look at the playing it out from the back and say it's still a sign that Ireland are trying to do too much of the wrong thing. I don't think so. I think execution-wise they got it wrong on a couple of occasions, but every team does that. You have to ask that question of the opposition. So, yeah, it was a brilliant day. Saturday night, 5 o'clock is a perfect kick-off time, I think. The atmosphere was cracking, and you just hope that now they can kick on from here, because there's such a likeable group of players that you really want them to be able to put a run of games together. Yeah, and a bigger test lies in wait tomorrow evening, which we'll get into in just a moment. Good stuff on the performance rankings this morning. Best done. They are Nathan Murphy's performance rankings, nobody's else, and we will be back next Monday morning with them.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
after the break with Gavin Cooney live from Poland ahead of the Republic of Ireland's game with Ukraine tomorrow night. First though, here's Nathan in conversation with a few of the Irish stars from Saturday's win over Scotland at the Aviva Stadium, starting with the man of the moment, Michael Obafemi.
Congratulations. Go on, show us the man of the match award. You're not letting it go. This is a proud day.
It is. Yeah, I mean, obviously got the win, got a goal and assist. I feel like the fans are happy. I'm happy, the team's happy, so yeah, that's the main thing.
I've been coming here for, I think, 13 years since the stadium first opened. That's the best goal that's ever been scored in the stadium.
Really?
Oh, I think so.
I don't mind it. I'll take that.
Talk us through it.
Obviously, Troy played me the ball, just thought I'd open up and just give it a go, do you know what I mean? And thankfully it went in, a little chicken dipper, but yeah, it was good.
Is that the sort of goal you score every day in training?
No, I wouldn't say so, but to be fair, I did hit a similar one in training during the week, so I kind of knew it was coming.
Jason, it had been a tough week for the team with the results in the first two matches. There must be enormous satisfaction in the group as to how you responded tonight.
Yeah, satisfaction, relief, I think. Yeah, we're just absolutely buzzing. I think, obviously we know it's not good enough to start, for this country, for, our own expectations, the fans' expectations, and I think we put it right tonight. Give the fans something to cheer about, and they were unbelievable as well, the fans, to be honest. But the whole group, the staff and stuff, everyone behind the scenes, they all deserve that victory. So
when criticism comes like it has over the last couple of days, groups can react in two different ways. Either there's a split and stories start coming out, or you can come together. It looked like, from the way you were talking to each other, the way you reacted at the full-time whistle, that it's drawn you together as a group more than anything.
Yeah, we've got great lads in there. The staff are unbelievable people as well, and I think that was key to it. The staff, like I said before, the people behind the scenes, keeping everyone happy, keeping everyone smiling, trying their best to kind of lift the spirits of the camp, and that was massive going into today. But like I said, the fans as well from the off, unbelievable. But I think we gave them something to shout about as well, with the passion, the intensity, and just the overall commitment from 11 players and everyone that came on. Just amazing.
You played a big part in that passion and intensity and broke up a huge amount of play and did the right thing on the ball. You must be very personally satisfied with how you performed out there.
Yeah, look, that was probably my second or third game at the Aviva, and I've probably my biggest critic at times, but I was happy enough with how I done tonight. Obviously I'm full in, and sometimes I can maybe overdo it, but it means so much to me to play for Ireland, and I'll always give 100%.
And while you had a fine game, Michael Obafemi is the one who's going to take most of the plaudits. Can you talk about his quality and the quality of the goal? And I think he wants the quality of the assist to be recognised as well.
Look, Mikey's an unbelievable lad, first and foremost. He's an absolute character around the place, and he's joy. He's always got a smile on his face and making everyone laugh. So for him to get that today was unbelievable. He's got amazing quality, and you've seen that firsthand today. Him and Troy, I have to say, unbelievable performances from both of them. So.
Thanks, Jason. Queen, after a tough couple of matches, that felt big.
Yeah, absolutely. I think no more than what the squad deserved. I think for the last 2 weeks, the effort and what we've put in to get a big result today was really big for us. And obviously we're buzzing with with scoring 3 goals in front of a packed out Aviva was it's a big day for us.
There is a lot of young lads in this group, and the criticism when things don't go well can be quite severe. How's it been after the defeats to Armenia and the Ukraine, and trying to keep confidence levels high and trying to make sure you can come out and perform to your best on a night like this?
Yeah, I think obviously it's difficult. We're obviously disappointed with the previous results, but also I think Ukraine game especially, I think we played quite well in that one for a lot of it. So I think there was a lot of positives to take from that game, and confidence was high enough in the squad anyway, and we knew if we got a big result today, then we're still in this group. So that's what we did.
It seems like there's a real togetherness as well. You could see on the full-time whistle 7-8 of the players straight together in a huddle, that rather than maybe there have been splits in the camp or anything like that when results don't go well, that actually there was a real bond there.
Yeah, no, listen, this group is a brilliant group. It's such a great group of lads. Players and staff, everyone puts in such a huge amount of effort on these trips. So when you get a big result like this, it's really nice to celebrate all together. And we are a really tight, close-knit group, and I think that shows when results didn't go our way the last few days, that we're able to come back still and put a big performance like today.
Yeah, and listen, there's such huge interest in the Irish team. When results don't go well, there'll be criticism. And does that creep into the squad when questions start getting asked about Stephen again after a couple of bad results?
No, I think we leave that really to the. I don't think we pay that much attention to it. Listen, we know in ourselves and the squad that we have, we know what the quality we have. So I think we don't pay too much attention to that. And we just want to do the best we can, and we did that today.
You're nearly one of the outlads out there at this stage. I think Michael Obafemi was the oldest of the front three, and he just turned 22 earlier in the week. Can you talk about Obafemi and Parrott and their performances? And you probably got a good view from behind of Michael Obafemi's goal.
Yeah, no, it's two brilliant players. It was a really exciting front two today for us, and thought they were both excellent, linking up for the second goal. And then Michael's strike obviously was one heck of a strike. The movement on it was amazing, and two great players.
I'm not going to ask you to compare Nathan Collins to Virgil van Dijk, but you do play behind some of the best defenders in the world. He's a very young player. How good is he?
Oh no, really good player. Thought today he's been excellent. I think over the last 3 games he's been excellent, really fitted into that spot brilliantly, and I think I've nothing but praise for him, and obviously it's great to play in front of him when he's doing such a good job.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Football Podcast?
If you're not going to play and risk starting players, I think it was the perfect chance to really experiment a little bit. I think it's a wasted opportunity.
There is not much point in getting rid of Stephen Kenny. Unless there is some outstanding alternative, I don't see what the point of doing that is.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, and download the OTB Sports app.
Things that put people off on a first date. Showing up late and getting your name wrong? Always a great start. Looking at their phone more than you? Hello? Someone who only talks about themselves. Oh really? God, aren't you great? Look, no one said dating is perfect, but at GoDating.ie we promise we'll always try and find your perfect match, because somewhere out there there's someone for you, and GoDating.ie will help you find them. Yes, even you, socks and sandals guy. Go on, go for it with GoDating.ie.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
You're welcome back. In the ad break there, you'll have heard Nathan in conversation with Caoimhín Kelleher, with Jason Malumbi and with Michael Obafemi after the Republic of Ireland's 3-0 win against Scotland at the Aviva Stadium on Saturday. It is 8:17. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And Gavin Cooney of the 42 is in Poland. Gavin, good morning to you.
Morning, friends. How are you?
Very well. So, are you in Łódź, or what is Łódź like at this time of year?
Łódź was very nice yesterday, and very nice last night. It has to be said. It was nice and warm when we landed yesterday. But I did wait to a message from I don't know who it is, but it must be some local meter weather service. Warning: storms and strong winds expected today. Risk of power outages. Seek shelter. Right. It's a busy enough day today. So it seems that the weather is turning here in Łódź. But Eoin didn't the weather turn in the very opposite direction for Stephen Kenny at the weekend?
Well, this is the thing: is positive weather needed for this
Have
positive
the storm
style
clouds
football?
lifted?
Yeah. Well, that is the question. Are we seeing sunnier skies over the Stephen Kenny rain?
I mean, there's Nathan scooping a number of intros in preview pieces in tomorrow night.
Where are the positivity levels at the moment, Gavin? Can one swallow make a summer, or is this certainly a sense that the positivity that we saw at the end of last year and at the start of this year has been replicated finally once again in another big game?
The positivity levels are wildly veering from one end of the scale to the other, aren't they? I think the atmosphere at that game was terrific before the game. You have to say there was no sign of any kind of doubt about the manager or a lack of support to the team festering beforehand, and it was absolutely bouncing afterwards. You have to say it was a really strong attendance, just shy of 48,000, and the atmosphere was really, really good. And my kingdom for a time when we talk about we analyse Ireland and talk about the team without just making it a referendum on the manager. It seems like he's either just proved that he's the man for the job forever, or that he's forever and got his back against the wall trying to prove that he's still the man for the job and is fighting for his job. But
that's the gig, though, isn't it, Gav? Like, that has been the gig for every international manager. The way these international windows work now, they're very cramped, condensed. Everybody's obsessed with the Premier League all season, and then suddenly you get 2 weeks and we do a deep dive into the entire psyche of Irish football, and the manager has to deal with that. And that's Martin O'Neill went through it, Mick McCarthy went through it, Giovanni Trapattoni went through it, Ian Barraclough's going through it now in Northern Ireland. Gareth Southgate has been questioned over in England because they're not scoring any goals. Like, this is the gig of the international man. We don't have a 40-game season to judge them on. So you got to win games, and you got to win them quickly. And if you go through a couple of matches without a victory, suddenly everybody's asking questions about every part of the setup.
Yeah, you are right. Of course you're right. I thought that maybe it was just like last year was such a protracted battle as regards his status, as regards his contract extension. I thought that maybe there was some of those questions were closed by that contract extension, but they're open. They're forever live questions. They'll never be fully answered because they were open 2 games after back-to-back defeats in this Nations League campaign. And it's absolutely right to criticise him and the team. Like, they were limp performances, and I know there's been lots of stats used and lots of excuses, etc., to talk about how close Ireland were in the games. And yes, they were undone by one like stunning long-range goal, another kind of freakish goal, which Ireland probably could have defended better. But the problem is that they were leaving themselves subject to those narrow margins by not creating enough chances and not scoring enough goals. That changed on Saturday. I think the most obvious thing that changed is that Ireland scored first. This is a team that once they start snappily. They always start games with energy, particularly at home. The problem is that they don't get that goal in the first 15 or 20 minutes. Then the energy saps away, the opponent grows in confidence, and Ireland don't look like they can score. But the early goal arrived yesterday, and then from there they closed. They saw the game out really well. Obviously, inspired by just moments of pure individual quality by Michael Obafemi.
That's the really interesting thing as well, is that it's a very small sample size, but Ireland and their 1-0 lead seems to rest pretty easily on their shoulders, where historically, if we're using all the trends that have come up time and time again, it is that when Ireland go 1-0 up, things tend to turn sour or nervous at very best very quickly. So is there a sort of freedom to what you're seeing at the moment that kind of show that level of performance after going 1-0 up?
I think so. I think also it's just a matter of how the game goes. You just get more space. Ireland, we saw in Armenia, Ireland are still struggling to break down teams who sit deep and deny them space. But obviously when Ireland score first, the opponent has to come out. That leaves you a bit of space. And Ireland has serious pace in the team now that they didn't have when, in those games where, Ireland would go ahead after 3 minutes against Georgia or Denmark, whoever it was, and then they'd troop off the pitch, lamenting the fact that, if anything, we scored a little bit too early. Those Ireland teams didn't have the level of pace that this Ireland team has. So I think it's as much a matter of space and how the game goes as it is some kind of intangible like confidence and so forth.
Possibly, does it have something to do as well with the supposed quality of the opposition, that Scotland came to Dublin thinking that they were favourites, and they were favourites, and they thought that they would win the game, and that when you go 1-0 down to, in inverted commas, an underdog, you got to push up that little bit harder and you leave space in behind. Is that sort of one of the explaining features as to why some of Ireland under Stephen Kenny's performances, the best performances, have come against teams of a higher quality?
I do think it's down to that level of space. I do think it's also... Do you think maybe there's an element of, if not, it's probably wrong to say that the teams underrate Ireland or just write them off. But I think there was an element of surprise last year. It's certainly in terms of when Ireland found that new way of playing with the 3 at the back. I think they did surprise teams like Portugal, maybe Serbia to a lesser extent, maybe Luxembourg away. And Ireland didn't have that element of surprise I thought anyway, in the first couple of games in the Nations League. Everything was very similar to how it was last year, and there's an element of teams figuring Ireland out. On Saturday there was a quite significant tactical change in that. Okay, there was 5 personnel changes, and all of those 5 players made a big impact. They brought big energy to the team, but they definitely staked a claim to remain in the team. But the tactical shift, I think, was telling. I think that was maybe the single biggest factor in it, in that the midfield 2, which is usually Josh Cullen and Jeff Hendricks sitting alongside each other, became a midfield 3. It was still 3 at the back, but there was 2 strikers up front and a midfield 3 of Cullen sitting, and then Malumbi and Jason Knight ahead of him. It was just, it was like a typical 4-3-3 midfield, like that triangle. But they dropped off. They were compact. They were difficult to play through without the ball, and they just brought so much energy with the ball. And by playing in that way, there's just more angles for passing. Obviously, the first goal came from a classic Irish goal in that it was eventually nudged over the line from a yard out on a set piece. But there was good Irish build-up play in before it. And I remember in Armenia, Chidozie Ogbene had lamented Ireland's ball speed, that they weren't moving the ball fast enough. Well, they did in this game, and it was helped by just the positions the players started in from the off. I thought there was really good movement where Malumbi dropped off in midfield, popped a first-time pass out to Jason Knight on the left, who gave the ball to McLean, whose cross was excellent on his right foot. And just before Obafemi could head it in, Scott McKenna just nodded it behind for the corner from which Ireland scored. So, I think that midfield change was very, very significant.
I wonder how much Stephen Kenny has learned over the past week then in terms of team selection, and you mentioned the predictability almost of what Ireland were doing and how quickly that's turned from 6-9 months ago. Teams weren't quite expecting Ireland to have three at the back to very quickly the standard of coaching is such now across Europe that teams knew exactly what they were going to get over the past week with Armenia and Ukraine, that Ireland are in a strong position in that there's not a huge difference in terms of quality from the top players in the squad to the players 15th to 20th in the squad, so you can actually interchange, and that maybe he needs to do a bit more of that to make sure there's the freshness there, and you're always trying a little bit something different, because I think trying to pick a best Irish 11 now, instantly I would go it's the 11 that started the last day, and you probably put Matt Doherty in it on the right side instead of Alan Brown, which is incredibly harsh on Alan Brown because he played well, but that maybe Ireland don't even need to play three at the back all the time anymore, that Stephen Kenny can mix and match a little bit and probably needs to do a bit more than that.
I did think that, I have to say, certainly after the Armenia game, you're thinking, do you really need three at the back here? Because in Armenia, Ireland's top passing combination was Nathan Collins to Shane Duffy, and you're thinking, well, that's just keeping the ball for keeping the ball's sake. That's not going to worry the opposition whatsoever. And Kenny has always talked about this need to be flexible, the need to be adaptable. And you didn't wonder, would he change the system for this game and against Scotland? And he always indicated that he wouldn't, but that there would be tactical shifts and tweaks within it. And I think the change here, not to bore your listeners too much, but the change is a 3-4-3 became a 3-5-2 against Scotland effectively, where a front three became, you take out a striker, Callum Robinson, and put in a midfielder, Jason Knight. And Knight is so much energy. There are times where, on opposition kickouts, he would play almost as to the left of a front three, because Ireland pressed really well from those opposition kickouts and stopped the ball getting to Andy Robertson down Scotland's left. But the question as to whether Ireland really still needed three at the back in those games, you're thinking particularly Armenia, will go on. Talk to people, they'll say that you're not necessarily playing three at the back, just that doesn't mean it's necessary defensive. That gives you a structure from which to attack. Maybe that's true. I don't think Shane Duffy's passing the ball well enough at the moment, I have to say, to offer that kind of attacking bedrock from a back three.
And maybe it's not overly relevant to tomorrow night, because you would expect Ukraine will dominate possession tomorrow, and Ireland, I think, almost certainly will go with three at the back again, despite the injury problems that are there. But for, say, home against Armenia come September, Ireland don't have that player. There is nobody out there that we're crying out for that can play in that number 10 that can pick apart a deep-lying defence. So he's going to have to try something different so that Ireland can create opportunities against those kind of teams.
Oh yeah, I think so. And that, for all the jubilation from the Scotland game, that is still the point I think that the team has to prove. I think you come away from these Nations League games, what does the team have to prove? One of them is, how, if you start well, especially in home games, you don't score. Can you keep that going? Can you find a breakthrough in the second half and not have the game just kind of creep away from you as it's been happening? And the second is just breaking down those teams. I was quoting the stats on your show a few days ago that Ireland under Kenny, since they went through the back, the three games in which Ireland have had their highest share of possession and their highest number of passes has been Luxembourg at home, Azerbaijan at home, and Armenia away. And they're the problem games. Had Ireland just won in Armenia, there's no talk of crisis at all. They're going to lose both of Ukraine and you shrug your shoulders at the end of it thinking, okay, well, that's fair enough. Ukraine are a much better team than Ireland. And that's where the team continues to let themselves down. And there's often, sometimes a little bit too much kind of boosterism after games. I have to say, I thought Kenny definitely tempered himself. After the Scotland game, he was invited to do a couple of victory laps. Have you answered your critics here, etc., and said that, personal vindication, that's not what I'm in it for, rightly enough. But it's because the team still has a good bit to prove.
Well, that was quite striking, wasn't it? Because he was also asked at one stage about the potential of this group, and we saw it on Saturday, just how good can these guys become. And Kenny 6 months ago is probably going all out and saying, listen, we're not thinking about qualifying for Euro 2024, we're thinking about how far we can go in this competition. Whereas actually he said, I think he even acknowledged himself, we've learned from making grand statements, but they can be very good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, he's not one to manage expectations, really, is he? I mean, and it goes back to last year when he said the target was to win the Nations League group. This was in October. This was before the draw was ever made. And he stuck to it, in fairness. I think you said that publicly. He brought that up.
You win tomorrow night.
He brought that up completely unprompted. And he hasn't run back from it since, and he can't really. So he hasn't been one to manage expectations. But in fairness, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, not refusing to manage expectations is one of the reasons he got the job in the first place. He was willing to talk about the players available and the team and the potential of it all in a way that was very, very different to the incumbent manager, who was actually Martin O'Neill at the time, and in a very different way to any other of the candidates who were out there. So, I mean, not managing expectations is kind of one of the reasons he got the job. But you're obviously getting a bit carried away. Obviously, if you think beat Ukraine now, you're looking at the mathematics.
You mentioned the first goal there, and typical Irish goal. Could we have a moment's appreciation, please, this morning for James McLean, who gets a rougher time than most Irish sports people. He won his 93rd cap on Saturday evening at 33. An awful lot of people felt, he won't be a Stephen Kenny type of figure. He'll be one of the first against the wall when Stephen Kenny comes in. We won't see James McLean again. Only Damien Duff, Steve Staunton, Kevin Kilbane, John O'Shea, Shea Given and Robbie Keane have played more games for Ireland than James McLean. And he was brilliant on Saturday. And set pieces are something we almost turn our noses up at this stage in Ireland. But with Howerhan not involved and Robbie Brady not in the squad anymore, Ireland have struggled hugely from set pieces over the past year, haven't looked anywhere near the threat that we have. And there's no shame in it. Like, look at what Liverpool do with set pieces, bringing specialist coaches in for all of those areas because the fine margins. And McLean's deliveries, I think from open play and the energy he brought down the left-hand side and the experience and all that was top quality, but also what he contributed from set pieces ended up being a game changer because it's what gave Ireland that first goal, which I think, as you mentioned as well, that corner kick comes from the McLean cross off his right foot just before that in towards Obafemi. So he gets a huge amount of totally unnecessary stick, I think, at times, James McLean, about his quality as much as anything else, but there's still something there.
Yeah, I mean, his delivery can let him down. And you start at the start of the game against Scotland, you think, maybe it's going to be another of those games because Ireland started really well. They pressed, they won the ball back, they drove to the end line, and McLean's shanked his cross over the crossbar. It was really quite disparaging. But from there, he was outstanding. His delivery was pretty much on the money throughout, off both feet, the right-footed cross that led to the corner, which he delivered for the goal. He was excellent on set pieces. There's another great cross for Scott Hogan for the goal that looks like it probably crossed the line.
Are we sure that didn't go in?
I'm not sure that it didn't, I have to say. There's no goal line technology. There is VAR, but we didn't. I don't know what camera angles they used because they didn't. I thought they obviously didn't show it on the ground. I thought we might see it in the press box, but no, we were just told VAR check ongoing that didn't cross the line. But I'm struggling to think of a better McLean performance for Ireland, I have to say. And you'd always bring that energy. I remember Mick McCarthy talking about, like, why do you pick James McLean? It's for something completely unpredictable, like that level of energy. And that unpredictability wasn't always. I always felt it wasn't always a good thing because you didn't know what he was going to do next. But that was, that could sometimes be to your detriment. But that level of unpredictability was good against Scotland for an Ireland team that had become predictable. And he just brought so much energy, so much pace, so much more, offered so much more than Enda Stevens did in the first couple of games. His delivery was excellent. I think he might be captain tomorrow night in Shane Duffy and John Egan's absence. And I always thought that Stevens was probably first choice ahead of McLean when everyone was fit. I wouldn't be so sure now.
Good to see James McLean get universal appreciation this morning. Now let's have a look at the YouTube comments. MLC says, he's a headless chicken running around. Dan says, oh God, no McLean, just because we've no options doesn't make him any good. Another comment in here from Brown Dog 1986. He says, the win against Scotland was bigger than you think. I now live in Scotland and travelled over with my half Scottish 8-year-old son, who is neutral going into the game but is now all about Ireland. And I think we have to read out some of Tom English's piece on the BBC Sport website, who said, watching Scotland getting eaten whole by a hungry Ireland team at the Aviva on Saturday summoned up an image from one of those David Attenborough programmes where the cocksure wild beast wanders into the wrong part of the Serengeti only to be pounced on by a ravenous lion. So, Gavin, of the 11 ravenous lions who started on Saturday, everybody's fit. Let's pretend everybody's fit. How many are you changing for a one-off European Championships qualifier, for example? How close to Stephen Kenny's best team is Saturday's 11?
Matt Doherty definitely comes into it.
For McLean?
On the right side.
Right, okay.
It is cruel to drop. Alan Brown was so good, but you could bring him in field for maybe Jason Malumbi if you're going to shift things up a bit. I think you might get Coleman in the team. It maybe is a bit harsh to be talking about dropping Duffy, but his passing, especially after the back, has been poor throughout these.
Well, tomorrow night could be a big change for Irish football's future, because the expectation, I assume, is that Collins will play in the centre of defence tomorrow night, and the way he has played over these 3 games, it's hard to see Nathan Collins giving up that spot for the next few years.
Oh yeah, it's quite exciting. Like, Ireland's emerging depth at centre back is quite exciting. One of the reasons to play a back 3 is to get all these guys into the team, and you forget Andrew Amabamadele, who's injured. Darrell O'Shea will come into the team. It's only a year since we're talking about Darrell O'Shea is the next big thing, but Collins has been outstanding throughout these. He does, it is future Ireland captain material, I have to say, the way he carries himself off the pitch and on it. He's been, he was the beacon, the one beacon of shining light through the misery of the 2 defeats. And was great again at the weekend. Scotland, tried to save a bit of face after going 3-0 down. He cleared everything. He headed everything away, and he's deceptively quick, isn't he? He's got a lot of paces, Nathan Collins. So it's interesting if you can talk about, to go back to Owen's question, what is your best 11 you're starting in a World Cup qualifier, etc., Euros qualifier. Maybe you get Coleman into the team at right centre back because of his leadership, because of his experience, because of his quality on the ball. I think it's been proven now that he can't play at right wing back. He's played it twice, played at wing back twice, away to Portugal, got injured, away to Armenia, got injured as well. To maybe bring him in, and you've got Collins and Egan alongside him. Other than that, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to make a case to drop anyone else who played. We haven't really talked about Obafemi yet. He's the difference. In fairness, we talk a lot about the manager's tactics, etc., but that level of individual quality is so telling, because if Obafemi, he played that pass. I'm not sure many other people in the stadium saw that pass that he played for Parrott, and then outrageous third goal. And without those 2 virtuoso contributions by Obafemi, it's Ireland have gone 1-0 up from a set piece that was prodded in from a yard out, and maybe there's an element of clinging on from there.
God, you hope he can stay fit.
Yeah.
Because that's been the issue for him, and he's nearly as wide as he is tall. Like, he is built like an absolute tank, and I was shocked when he said he'd never scored from outside the box before. When you look at the sheer venom he could hit that with, and the pace and the ferocity of it, you would think that's something he's going to be trying a lot more in the future. But obviously, he's had constant hamstring problems. He's a big doubt for tomorrow night. I know Stephen Kenny seemed to rule him out, but Obafemi afterwards was saying, I'm going to be knocking on the physio's door and whatever I need to do. But again, do you risk him and the potential to aggravate it and sort of ruin his summer and ruin his pre-season and all of that? Because I think as well, personality-wise, he's someone the Irish supporters can really buy into as well. He just needs to get a run of games.
Yeah, personality-wise, I don't know. Maybe it was the Sky interview when he was asked. Can't remember exactly how the question went, but it went along the lines of, "Well, Michael, things were terrible before this, but this was a good result. What's different?" And he just went, me? He has been completely bedeviled by injuries. I mean, this season at Swansea was the first time, excuse me, I think he put 3 90 minutes back to back in his career, which is crazy, and he talked about, I've been 4 years waiting for this start to the Aviva, having made his debut under Martin O'Neill, but there's very, very few times in that period where you're screaming at the manager saying, why haven't you picked Michael Obafemi? Because he's usually injured. Like, he's just such a difficult history of muscle injuries and hamstring injuries and those fast twitch muscles that he relies on as a player. I know he'll say there's a lot more to his game than just his pace. We saw that there is a lot more to his game than just his pace, but it's still a huge part of his game. He has travelled for this game against Ukraine. He's desperate to play. We'll see if he does. Hopefully he's fit to play. I think the press conference isn't until later on, so we'll learn a little bit more then. The mood music would seem to suggest that he probably is more likely not to play than play. But Nathan, you're completely correct. You can't risk him, because setting it like a hamstring setback for him is a lot more significant than it would be for any other player of the squad. We might revisit this question in a bit more depth later in the week, but that question about the best Ireland 11, Nathan, do you go along with Gavin's assessment on it?
Yeah, I think it's going to change all the time because, again, I don't think there's a huge difference, and we're all operating in hindsight. Funny, David Connolly was on this day last week saying he was looking at it at a slightly different angle, and he felt that Kenny should still be experimenting during the Nations League, which I don't think was really an option, but he felt that against Armenia he should have gone with Will Keane and Michael Obafemi up front and tried something different. But I don't think anybody was calling for Obafemi to start ahead of Armenia, because who are you going to drop? Were you going to drop Chidozie Ogbene? Were you going to drop Callum Robinson, considering the form they had shown previously? I don't think so. So suddenly, is Robinson out of the picture? Does Ogbene get back in? Because, Parrott and Obafemi had such a good partnership up there. So there's options. And I think with young players, the other thing, and every coach in any sport of the world will tell you this, young players are inconsistent. And let's see them do it back to back. Let's see a lot of these players follow up on it with no Shane Duffy, no John Egan, potentially no Michael Obafemi. Let's see some of these younger players actually put sustained performances together. A Jason Malumbi, who is so strong in breaking up play, hasn't had huge runs of games. Did get a bit of a run of games with West Brom at the end of the season, but actually go and do it in 2 consecutive Irish performances. Likewise, Jason Knight. Show actually that this is our midfield 3 for the next 2 years, that Stephen Kenny has no choice. And we haven't really seen that from this group. We get very excited after one game and then it falls a little bit flat. So I think that's the risk when you have so many young players on the pitch. But there's options there. I don't think, again, you could look at a back 3, and I think we all feel we might get to a back 3 in the next couple of years of Nathan Collins, Darragh O'Shea and Andrew Omobamidele. But then Jimmy Dunn has just come into the squad, and Jimmy Dunn's been brilliant since he went to QPR. So we had him on the show last year. Again, talk about an interesting personality, like a guy you really want to do well. So I think Stephen Kenny probably needs to look at players on the training ground, freshness, form, and maybe start having that a bigger impact than actually players who have just done well in a match and don't play again for 3-4 months. So I maybe not having a settled side is the best thing for Ireland over the next couple of years.
For sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, very briefly on, when you are picking the team, I think it has to be dictated by match fitness and match minutes. I mean, one of the biggest thing that Ireland brought to that game against Scotland was just energy and conviction, and that was just so absent from those previous games. I think you have to tailor your team selection according to who's playing regularly at club level, so they can bring that high energy. Because Ireland need to play with that high energy now. They're not. I don't think they're good enough, as we've seen in Armenia. They're not good enough for some kind of sterile domination at half pace to wear you down and will eventually win 1-0. They're not good enough for that. They need to throw everything into games. So I think the match fitness is a major factor, I think, in team selection.
Gavin, go get some shelter from those storm clouds that are on the way for both Wood and for Stephen Kenny's managerial future, I assume. Thanks a million.
After the week we've had, I'm glad that they're literal rather than metaphorical. So. Cheers, Gavin. Thank you.
Gavin Cooney of the 42.ie on the line there from Poland. It is the Republic of Ireland against Ukraine tomorrow night in the 4th Nations League game of this campaign. Right, we have the qualifiers draw to bring you in just a sec.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse. I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
No, Eamon, come on, don't be. No, I'm not having that. No.
is your time to shine. Bring us the blockbuster news.
An OTB AM derby in the All-Ireland quarterfinals. Kerry versus Mayo, Galway versus Armagh, Derry versus Clare, and Cork against Dublin is the last day.
It's absolutely outrageous the way this draw was rigged that Mayo couldn't play Galway. Because we played them 6 weeks ago. So Galway, Armagh, Derry, Clare, one of those sides is going to end up in an All-Ireland final. And Mayo have to beat Kerry, Dublin, and then one of them. What the hell? It's going to be the greatest All-Ireland success of all time.
A Mayo Galway All-Ireland final?
Take it. If Galway win the All-Ireland, I'm not coming to work for a week. Imagine if Galway sneak in and win a bloody other All-Ireland final after Mayo been the dominant force in Connacht for 10 years. It'd sicken you.
The thing is, I mean, you must be looking back in the league final now and say, thank God James Horan completely didn't show anything that day, as in just decided, lads.
Incredible how they've managed to maintain that through the championship as well, of completely not showing anything. Listen, as I said earlier, let's go after David Clifford in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, and do what?
Whatever it takes.
Like what?
Portico Hora plus 3 more, I think, is what will be needed this time.
Seems like a sound tactical.
Wowzers. Kerry Mayo.
Option.
We go to Limerick?
I mean, it's probably too late at this point. Well, no, it's not too late. I mean, it's just not going to happen at this point. It'll obviously be Croke Park. It's just whether or not do they put them on the Saturday night. Well, you can't get hotels in Dublin, can you, at the moment? That'll be a Sunday 4 o'clock.
No, it's got to be the blockbuster. It's Saturday night.
I think Dublin Cork will be the Saturday night. The two capitals go toe to toe.
Ain't nobody want to see that.
Nobody.
This feels like a bad draw for Dublin. They're going to be going into that Kerry game massively undercooked.
I actually do think so. I think that Dublin would have wanted somebody a bit stronger than that. Dublin will beat Cork handily. Derry Clare is a great draw for both of those teams. I think Clare probably would have wanted Derry or Galway, obviously, and they couldn't have got. They didn't want anybody on the other side of the draw. So that's a brilliant. Like Derry or Clare are going to be in an All-Ireland semi-final.
It's a brilliant draw for those 4 counties. And Galway and Armagh as well that has the potential to be a real cracker. But for those 4 teams on that side of the draw, I think Galway or Armagh will fancy themselves. If they come out of that game, they'll have the feeling of having beaten probably one of the top sides in the country. And then Derry and Clare obviously would have had keen rivalry in the league as well. So it's a very interesting draw.
Who are you backing to get to the final from that side?
Galway.
You're backing Galway?
Yeah.
I think, well, I said it earlier in the show, so I have to stick to my guns now. I think Rian O'Neill is a potential shout for Player of the Year if he came out on that side of the draw. So I'm naturally going to go for Armagh.
The dynamic changes totally on that side of the draw because, Galway have lived in the shadows of Mayo for the last decade. They haven't won big games in Croke Park. And now all of a sudden we're talking about Galway as the most likely team to find themselves in an All-Ireland final. Like, that is an enormous amount of pressure suddenly on these players. I'm not saying that they can't do it or they won't respond to it. But now they're going in against that game against Armagh where they'll be the favourites, and they would probably be the favourites if they win that as well in a semi-final.
I think Derry will be favourites for that semi-final, to be honest. I think Derry I actually haven't checked the odds. I presume Derry are third favourites for the All-Ireland.
But Derry's loss to Galway in the league they just fell apart, and that was a game basically where promotion was on the line.
Was that the game where Shane McGuigan got sent off?
He was
that was the Roscommon game.
He missed that game through suspension, I think.
Yeah.
Galway scored 4 goals that day and ran through them. I just think Galway have that bit of the X factor with their forwards. Like Finnerty has found form, Walsh is a match winner, Comer. When those guys hit Croke Park, I think if they play with a bit of confidence, they could really light it up. And Galway have a tradition, don't they, Nathan? Wasn't it 98 where they came from nowhere to win that All-Ireland?
Oh, yeah.
After Mayo in 96 and 97. So they have that bit of a swagger. If they do get to Croke Park and perform. So that's why I'm backing them to get the All-Ireland. But I think Kerry and Dublin are a long way ahead of anybody else, to be honest.
Yeah, well, we will see.
It's a tasty draw, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a couple of good
Clare, Derry against Clare. Again, Derry aren't used to being in this position.
No, absolutely. Clare on the crest of a wave now after a couple of wins. That was a smashing result for them on Saturday, wasn't it? And to get that in Croke Park as well, even though there wasn't a big crowd there, but just to have that game in Croke Park under the belt, I think might be significant for Clare too. I
was kind of looking through it yesterday about the lack of success of provincial beaten finalists in the back door, and 2010 they all got beaten after losing their provincial finals. That happened again yesterday for the first time since 2010, and I think that was a factor in the 2010 quarter-final washout, where everybody coming into those quarter-finals were on a massive run of momentum because they just won a couple of games in a row getting into that place. You'll have the same situation for this weekend. And I do think there's a chance for maybe 2 or 3 of those teams who are coming in from the back door to actually win those games. I don't think we'll get a washout this year, to be honest. I think it'll be a shock if both Dublin and Derry happen to lose those games. But still, you're watching all 4 of those games. I think we got 4 very good games at the weekend, and there has been a lot said about the split season and the compression of this year. I think was it Oisin said in the conversation with Kieran Donaghy yesterday, referring to it as June madness. Like, that's what it is now. These fixtures are all packed together between both codes. I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to get a few great weekends of hurling and football, and I like that fixture list.
I would agree. Is that
it's disrespectful to Mayo? Your like of that fixture list. Bit of arrogance there, Eoin.
As a neutral, Kerry Mayo.
In this. Listen, you haven't been a neutral since the day you walked into this office. There's always been something going on.
There's always been something going on. I'm just really appreciative of the great neutral ties that we've got. You're just pissed off at all of this, really.
No, it's fine. Maybe this is exactly what wakes Mayo up from their slumber.
That's what I was going to say. Is this the game that gets them back into the groove?
It's more if you win that game and then you have to play Dublin straight afterwards. But again, maybe you're then have a little bit of momentum. I'm sure Mayo did beat Dublin in the semi-final last year. I just always still go back to the 2017 game against Kerry where Mayo ripped them apart and
twice
somehow take some confidence. But that's a different Mayo. That's 5 years ago now. So, okay, I'm fine with this.
Cathal, what else is going on?
Well, let's just recap last night's golf. Rory McIlroy successfully defending the Canadian Open title. The Down native finished with a final round of 62 to finish on 19 under par. That was 2 shots better than Tony Finau, who finished in second. McIlroy won the last staging of the event in 2019. Shane Lowry finished on 9 under par. That was in a tie for 10th. Just to recap that quarter-final draw in the All-Ireland Football Championship: Kerry against Mayo, Galway versus Armagh, Derry against Clare and Cork against Dublin. That draw has just been made. Armagh beating Donegal yesterday by 317 to 16 points. Cork were 218 to 116 winners over Limerick. Liverpool now on the brink of signing striker Darwin Núñez from Benfica. The Benfica have confirmed in a statement this morning that a deal has been signed with a €75 million fee plus add-ons, which will take the package up to €100 million. And the 22-year-old is expected to have his medical today ahead of official confirmation of the move. On the Republic of Ireland front, Shane Duffy and John Egan will both miss tomorrow's Nations League game with Ukraine. Duffy is suspended. Egan has left the squad due to family reasons. QPR defender Jimmy Dunn has been called in as cover by manager Stephen Kenny. There are a couple of games tonight in the Nations League to watch out for. In League A, it's a repeat of the 2018 World Cup final. France play host to Croatia. Elsewhere, Austria take on Denmark, and one game in League B, Iceland take on Israel, and that kicks off at 7:45 Irish time. In swimming, Roisin Rian claimed a bronze medal on the opening day of the 2022 World Para Swimming Championships yesterday. The Limerick native produced a brilliant performance to earn her spot on the S13 100-metre butterfly podium by just 1/4 of a second, and she's back in the pool today as she vies for another medal in the SB13 100-metre backstroke decider. And finally, there's racing this evening at Kilbeggan, where the first is off at 5:30.
All right, Cathal, good stuff. Just to tell you, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. And just a reminder as well, you can join us at the Silken Thomas Kildare Town on June 21st, as we'll be looking ahead to the Dubai Duty Free Irish Derby Festival at the Curragh Racecourse. We'll be chatting to Irish Derby legends Michael Cannan, Johnny Murtagh and Seamie Heffernan for an in-depth Irish Derby discussion and analysis and what it takes from horse and jockey to win the iconic race. You can see otbsports.com/events and our social channels to register. Just going to run through some of the back pages before we wrap up here. The Irish Times first up. Photograph there of Stephen Sheridan scoring the 3rd goal for Armagh yesterday in that win over Donegal in the back door. So Armagh basically leading the way on a lot of the sports sections this morning. Orange Crush is the headline on the Irish Independent sports section. McGuinney's men dish out Donegal drubbing and look like the team none of the big guns will want to face, and it is Galway who they are going to be facing in the All-Ireland quarter-finals. The Herald goes with potential has Kenny excited. Ireland manager looking forward to Ukraine clash despite having a weakened squad. A couple of the other ones here. The Guardian goes with World Cup warning. Southgate tells United players they have a lot to do for Qatar. And Núñez to have medical today for a €100 million Liverpool deal, as you've just been hearing. Let's just bring you through some of the rest of the Irish back pages. Orange Crush is the back of the Irish Daily Mail. Slick Armagh marching on to Croke Park. Brown says we need to kick on from Scots win. That's Alan Brown speaking to the media in the aftermath of Saturday. All hands on deck, meanwhile, is the back of the Irish Mirror. Dara answers defensive SOS as Kenny plans without Egan and Duffy. Dara Lenihan may be starting for the Republic of Ireland tomorrow night. and back of the sun is loads to be excited about. Kenny upbeat ahead of Ukraine rematch, and Rian's a crowd pleaser is the headline on Armagh.
Only really works if you don't pronounce Luds in the correct manner.
Yeah, well, they did leave out the accents on it, so I assumed that I pronounced that correctly, but willing to change that to which to be excited about, which, I mean, just, you know. Back at the Irish Daily Star is Clockwork Orange. Donaghy says Armagh fans will take over Croke Park. His rallying cry, I'm 100% sure there'll be plenty of orange in Dublin for that weekend, whatever that fixture gets set for, that Galway Armagh one, possibly the pick of the fixtures in the All-Ireland quarterfinals. Right, it is 8:54. You're with us here on OTB AM. We will be chatting to Alan Quinlan in just a sec.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse. I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
Ah, no, Eamon, come on, don't be, no, I'm not,
Yes.
no.
All right, a very, very interesting weekend in the URC, to say the least. On Friday night in the first semi-final, Leinster were beaten 27 points to 26 at home by the Bulls, and then on Saturday, Ulster were beaten in heartbreaking fashion on a 17 points to 15 scoreline by the Stormers. It means we will have an all-South Africa URC final. It'll be the Stormers against the Bulls. Alan Quinlan is with us on the line. Alan, good morning.
Morning, Owen. How are you?
A bad weekend for the Irish provinces, I want to say, but a positive weekend for the URC in the long run, it seems.
Yeah, if you want to look at it like that, I suppose the South Africans obviously started the tournament very slowly, and particularly in the first 4 or 5 games, they had a lot of losses, and we weren't sure where they were going to end up. I think there's three South African teams now in the Champions Cup next year, and 2 of them are in the final, which we probably didn't see coming, particularly at the weekend. Everybody thought that Leinster would win, and probably Stormers would beat Ulster, but both results have gone the other way. I think Ulster looked like they were going to win the game, hanging on for dear life at the end, but conceded that late try, and obviously what happened Friday night was a shock against the Bulls for Leinster.
It felt after Leinster were beaten on Friday night that this was a really brilliant opportunity for Ulster to get some silverware, that they would be in a really good shot if they could get over the semi-final to actually win in Belfast and get over the line with a trophy that the Ulster fans have been crying out for so long. Like that second half showing where they don't score a single point, they're a man up for the closing stages of the game. Like that will surely have to go down as a desperately disappointing 40 minutes for Ulster Rugby.
Yeah, I think the Stormers started well, scored 2 tries, and you kind of feared the worst for Ulster. But then they got 2 great tries themselves. I think, look, obviously there was a little bit of a doubt about the pass for Balakoon for the first try, but he did brilliantly then with the offload for Stuart Moore for the second, and you think they're right back in the game. Cooney kicks the penalty just before half time, and you think they're in a great position, but I think they didn't manage the game as well as they probably should have in the second half. Didn't have enough, probably kicked the ball a little bit too much. I know there was talks of they didn't have enough territory in that second half, but they had their opportunities and just couldn't get over the line and stretch the lead a little bit. I thought, and you could say the same for Leinster, they had kickable penalties and they probably should have had shots at goal, and they kept going for the corner and trying to score them all tries. But hindsight's a great thing. They stole a line out, I think, going with a couple of minutes to go that the Stormers had, and in 78 minutes, they stole a Stormers line out. They were close to the Ulster line, and I thought that was it. That was the game for Ulster, but they probably should have just held on to the ball and tried to hold on to it. They kicked it away again. Stormers got back, and inevitably in the end they scored. I think it was 84th or 85th minute. It was heartbreaking in the end. It's hard to say that Ulster should have won the game. They certainly could have won the game, but you think if they were coming back home to Belfast to play a final, that they would have been the team that probably would have certainly would have been favourites to lift the trophy, and it's a massive opportunity lost. a little bit like Munster, long time since they won a trophy. It's 16 years. It's longer for Ulster, and they've come up short again.
Quinny, can you talk about what should happen there then on 78 minutes when Ulster win that line out? Who are you looking for in that position to make the big decisions? And is that what they were missing? A bit of leadership then? Is that just experience? Is it something you learn from quite quickly?
It's difficult, Nathan. If you're an Ulster fan or an Ulster player, there's a nervous excitement when you win that turnover. It's easy to say for me, looking back, maybe hold on to the ball there and just pick and go. It's a long 2 minutes. I always think back to the European final in 2008. We started picking and going Munster in about the 72nd or 3rd minute. It was much too early. But with 2 minutes to go, there's always a danger you're going to give away a penalty and you're going to do something wrong there. But I think it's down to leadership. It's down to experience, composure, Nathan. And they probably didn't have that. If you're going to kick the ball, ideally you try and get it to your out half, and he kicks long up the field, or find a touch finder outside, down towards the halfway line or something. But they kicked it down there. It didn't go out. Stormers come back and attack again. Particularly when you're after doing something so good by stealing that line out. It's deflating for the opposition. So I think it's down to a little bit of leadership and composure that they lacked at times in that second half, not just at the end of the game, but in the second half. Again, the bench situation, you could say it for both Leinster and Ulster, the impact off the bench and the ability for both sets of coaches to use players off the bench probably didn't help. But they were a whisker away, weren't they, Ulster, and just lacked that little bit of control right at the end.
That point on the bench is a good place to kick off on Leinster. Is Leinster's depth just not what we thought it was? Is it very position specific, or what's your read on the backup players that aren't making the starting 15 for Leinster at the moment?
Well, obviously they have a huge amount of number of players. They used over 60 players in the league, and maybe that's something that's come against them a little bit right at the end of both competitions, that there was so much rotation. I heard Jake White speaking about his continuity and selection in the last kind of 3-4 months with his team. Very similar team, small tweaks here and there. But for Leinster, when Cian Healy comes on with 2 minutes to go, Sean Cronin didn't come on. Ross Maloney came on late in the game as well. I think it's Michael Alatoa came on obviously for Tadhg Furlong and 65th or something minute, but I just think it's having that ability to make changes, particularly when a game is not going well. And again, it's new territory, isn't it, for Leinster? Being under this sort of pressure, the similarities with the La Rochelle game. For Ulster, Tom O'Toole is still on the field in the 80th minute. Had a brilliant game, but it's just, I suppose, making some changes before that. Ulster looked out on their feet at the end, and they looked really fatigued. So, ideally you have great depth and you can bring on 4 or 5 internationals. Leinster's depth probably in some specific positions is not as strong as maybe we think. Loads of really good young players, but maybe that's something that came against them right at the end, particularly in the type of game that they played against the Bulls.
And given the resources that Leinster have, that'll be a source of particular disappointment. On a stylistic level then, did Ronan O'Gara and Jake White go about this thing in exactly the same way, or what did you see in terms of comparing the 2 big defeats for Leinster?
Well, something that was very obvious in both games was the pressure and the line speed. Now, I really thought, I know there was a few people questioned the possibility of sin bins in the La Rochelle game, and some of the penalties that La Rochelle were penalised for. I thought there were some silly penalties. I said it on Friday to Ronan. And obviously, if he lost the game and La Rochelle lost the game, he would have been frustrated with some of those penalties. I think it flipped right to the end of the game in La Rochelle, where Leinster were the ones giving away the penalties. But on Friday night, I just thought that the similarities were the line speed, the pressure, not allowing Leinster any sort of time on the ball. I didn't think the Bulls could do that, but it's amazing in sport when you get ahead and when you get a little bit of confidence and you get a feel that, they were 17-7 up at one stage, and they believed they were in the game. And that's exactly what you want to do if you're playing Leinster. I've said it so many times, and Munster played them in the last number of years. If Munster can stay in the game, then you can ask questions, try and get a little bit of doubt in the opposition. But again, it was just one of those nights on where just things went wrong for them. Uncharacteristic knock-ons, timing of the passes, the execution. When I think when Rory O'Loughlin scores that try in the 68th or 69th minute, I think everybody has a feeling that, that's it. They're just going to get the next score, win the game and get out of here and, dust themselves down for a final. But you have to give massive credit to the Bulls. I think they put so much pressure. I thought some of the refereeing decisions the other night against Leinster were really poor. I thought the Bulls were offside a little bit. And exactly what you want to do, you're kind of pushing. And again, the similarity to La Rochelle, you're right on the edge, aren't you? Trying to get off the line really quickly, because if you allow Leinster play, well, they can really punish you. So they'll be frustrated when they look back at some of the decisions. The breakdown obviously was an issue again. So it's just probably, it's not easy to pinpoint what went wrong. And I think the obvious thing is we all start talking about the power and the physicality, but I just think Leinster are probably not used to being tested like this.
How do they fix that, Quinny? Because, Leo Cullen was on about the squeeze game and it not being in their DNA with the way Leinster play. And it's not, because we watch them every Friday night. They're a great watch. They score lots of tries. But these two matches, they don't face that type of power too often. Now, maybe they will face it a lot more with the South African sides coming in, but the fact that South African sides are coming into the Champions Cup as well, does this need to be a summer of real soul searching at Leinster and the possibility of looking to change their DNA?
No, I don't think so. I think they just look in both games, Nathan, it's very, very fine margins, and it's incredible how the momentum just shifts when something goes wrong. I think what they do need to understand and learn, when you're such a dominant team throughout most of the season, and the expectation is so high. So everybody said Leinster will beat La Rochelle. Everybody said Leinster will beat the Bulls. It's about probably just understanding that you're going to face a ferocious kind of intensity. It's hard to replicate that. So to answer your question, it's very difficult for them, because if you don't face that opposition throughout the year, if you go right back to the first game, Leinster beat the Bulls 31-3 in the Aviva. I think it was the first game up. It's hard to, maybe I think that they, you learn harsh lessons along the way, and maybe they'd be better for that going forward. I know people have pinpointed and said, well, last year La Rochelle beat them in the semi-final. They should have known better this time. Very small margins in both games. I think Johnny Sexton was probably key to both games as well. A little bit of control, decision making when they're ahead. They're not usually chasing a game either. They're a very, very dangerous side, and I think that was the key the other night. Jake White even said it, that if Leinster get ahead of you, they're a very hard team to reel in. So 95% of their decision making is always very, very good. But I just think I'm not sure how you learn and replicate that sort of intensity. Maybe you do it in training more and have more kind of confined spaces to deal with that intensity. But it's something that they have to, a little bit of soul searching has to go on now, and they've got to look. But again, most teams would love to be in that position, wouldn't they?
What about the intensity that those Leinster players who are Test internationals, who are Lions players, have experienced over the last couple of years? They're as experienced, if not more experienced, than all the players that they're coming up against. Like, it's not like they were up against a team of Springboks the other night. And I mean, we constantly comment on Leinster and Ireland being so similar. So is that a real concern then for the national team, if it feels that Leinster are somewhat undercooked going into these big, powerful games?
Well, what's a concern for the national team, and it's pretty regular, something we talk about, is if you're playing against if you're going to play in the All Blacks are going to play against Ireland. Well, one of the first things they're going to talk about is being aggressive, physical, being in their faces, trying to take them on and turn it into an arm wrestle and really win those collisions. So it's trying to deal with that pressure and power. So, but it is a concern. I think it is a concern, and you'd love to have 2 locks in the second row, 120 kilos. But again, you've got to work with what you have, and we had those conversations regularly in the last number of years when we played England, when we played New Zealand at the World Cup. We've got to find a different way and probably just cut your cloth according to your measure. You can't just invent those. Leinster have Jason Jenkins signed for next year. He's obviously a very, very big man. They're bringing him in he's bringing him in for a reason. Joe McCarthy is a very physical and powerful player who's still very young. He brings a lot of that power and physicality that you don't naturally get. It is a concern, Eoin, yeah, for sure. But
Quinny,
I think one of the things...
I was going to say, Andy Farrell names a squad on Wednesday. Give us a bolter.
A bolter. It's difficult. I was talking, Nathan, on Friday about it. I think Jimmy O'Brien should go. I think he's been brilliant for Leinster this season. Very, very consistent. It's hard to pick too many bolters out of this. I think Ross Maloney could go, given his performances up to that final with Leinster. I'd love to see Jordan Larmour back in the mix. I think even when he touched the ball a few times the other night, he looks so dangerous as well. But it's hard. Nathan Doak, maybe. He's someone that has incredible talent for Ulster, but it's hard to kind of pluck someone out of the blue, and I don't know if there will be too many bolters in this squad.
Alan Quinlan, good stuff. Thanks a million for being with us.
Cheers, lads. Thanks.
Cheers. Alan Quinlan there on the line. It is 9:10. You're with us here on OTB AM, which is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what we've got coming up on OTB Sports Radio throughout today. 1 o'clock is OTB Gold.
Kerry propaganda starting already. We're going to have Kerry legends every day for the next 2 weeks.
Unbelievable. The man who haunts your dreams. Splunk at 3 o'clock, Splunk Sport. Classic Game Club is Tip against Kilkenny 2014. That's from 4 o'clock. Jason Sherlock is OTB Gold from 6, and Off the Ball then live on your radio from 7 o'clock tonight. You can follow Off the Ball across all our social channels. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and be sure to download the OTB Sports app for the latest and best sports content and analysis. We are back after ads chatting football with Anthony Moyles.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Marginal gains? XG? Top speed? Recovery? What's it all about? Want to improve but don't know where to start? With more data than ever now available, OTB Sports have teamed up with Whoop to cut through the noise and help you raise your game, no matter the sport. OTB Sports are delivering the metrics that matter. Meaningful metrics in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. Follow OTB Sports social channels for the best insights and stats this season.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
12 minutes past 9. You're with us here on OTB AM. The quarter-final draw for the All-Ireland Football Championship has happened. It is Kerry against Mayo, Galway against Armagh, Dublin against Cork, Derry against Clare. Tasty enough draw, to say the least. We'll obviously touch on that Kerry-Mayo clash in just a moment, but I think Armagh are the story of the morning after yesterday's win. They're on all the back pages. Clockwork Orange is what it says in the back of the Irish Daily Star. They will be absolutely thrilled to have avoided the Kerry-Dublin side of the draw, I'm sure, because that looked like we're seeing momentum building in a side that could go all the way to an All-Ireland final here.
Yeah, they were massively impressive. It's funny, when you play Donegal, I think, so first 15-20 minutes of the game, Donegal actually looked pretty good, well in control. Armagh were kind of stuttering along a little bit, bar of course for the brilliant goal in the first minute. But Donegal are a weird team in the sense of once they go behind, they have no plan B. The plan B is, okay, they stick Murphy in full forward, but at that stage, Armagh were ready for that. Once Armagh managed to get their nose in front at that vital period around the 25th, 26th minute, there was no looking back. Like, really, they won at a canter. You know, they were very impressive from both an offensive attacking point of view and a defensive point of view. Fellas know their roles. Great communication on the pitch, not afraid to mix it up, long ball, short ball, probing, you know, guys willing to take on shots. And then they've got some players who are just absolutely imperious at the moment. Like O'Neill is just saying, listen, give me the ball. It's funny watching him, and there was a little segue where he kind of brushes past Murphy after kicking one of his scores, and Murphy kind of looks at him as if to say, well, that's what I was able to do, and I'm not able to do it anymore, you know, because O'Neill was literally going, I'll catch it, I'll kick it, I'll do whatever you want, I'll tackle back. And he was just outstanding. And when you have a player in that kind of form, who's been in that form all year, like you remember what he was like against Dublin in the league, it's just, it breeds massive confidence around the squad, around the rest of the players, and they know that if when he's needed and when they need to get a score, he's a guy who'll put his hand up and get that score for you. And you can see it. Like, I've never seen Stephen Campbell play as well as he's been playing consistently. You know, he's a guy who might have come on and lasted 25, 30, 40 minutes. He often got the shepherd's hook, like on numerous occasions, and you could see he'd be cutting a kind of a frustrated figure, whereas now he's playing with massive confidence. As I say, taking shots on that maybe, you know, where you need that confidence, you know, to take those shots on, and he's doing that. So McGeeney and the rest of the management team there have obviously instilled a great belief in them, and they're a very, very dangerous opposition now, because Croke Park, I think, I know Donaghy mentioned it, but Croke Park will suit them. The vast expanses will suit their kicking game. I think they'll be able to actually pull Galway apart, and I'm not convinced of Galway. I wasn't convinced of Roscommon, and that showed up at the weekend, and I'm not really convinced of Connacht. I wasn't convinced of Mayo at the weekend either. So, you know, I think Armagh will be licking their lips at this one.
Yeah, they must be waking up incredibly excited, because when you look at the four teams on that side of the draw, Armagh are actually the ones who've been in an All-Ireland final most recently. Like, this is a huge opportunity. So is there a balance now of actually, for the management team, in terms of hype and excitement of, you know, you want to ride that wave of momentum that they have from the couple of weeks and the victories they've had over the last couple of weeks, and how you make sure that actually you don't start looking a little bit too far ahead, which I'm sure all four of those counties are thinking, like, one of us is going to end up in an All-Ireland final here.
Yeah, there's a balancing act, absolutely, Nathan, and I think they'll do a job of trying to bring them back down to earth. But at the same time, what you want to do is say, listen, this is what you can do. You don't want to take too much confidence from them, and you don't want to kind of, you know, burst the bubble too much. You want to instill the confidence into them. You want to say, this is what you can do, but it's built on a certain number of building blocks. Like, it's funny, after the last game, I think again Donaghy was interviewed, as he seems to be the person who goes out there in front of the media. But anyway, he mentioned that Kieran McGeeney got back to basics. He got back to literally hard work. You know, so I'd say the build up to that game was, you know, it's 15 on 15, and we're going to outwork our opposite man. There was no kind of fancy stuff. There was no, you know, like, of course they had patterns during the game, but I'd say he literally just wanted a performance as regards energy, intensity, work rate, and if they were getting kind of 8 or 9 out of 10 at that level, well, then the rest would look after itself. And I'd say he's instilled that in them now, and I'd say that's kind of like, as I said, a basis for them going forward, because I think he knows once the talent, once the work rate and once the intensity is there, once the intent is there, that the talent will show through, which it has been doing.
It'll obviously be a fascinating tactical battle in that one, and also how Armagh just approach it from minute to minute. Like early in the game yesterday, and McGinley was saying in co-commentary, you know, that's why you drop off a kick out, because Patton was just going long, finding his man. And you say there earlier on that Michael Murphy was looking at Rian O'Neill, like, that's the sort of stuff I used to be able to do. It looked like it was old school Michael Murphy for the opening quarter of the game yesterday. So yeah. What did Armagh do that forced Patton to go short, and essentially the whole thing blew up in their face as a result of those kickouts changing, right?
Yeah, like, people will look, and we'll get onto the Kildare Mayo game in a while, I'm sure in a minute. There's an awful lot of pressure is heaped on the kick out at the moment, and an awful lot of pressure is obviously heaped on the goalkeeper because he's controlling it per se. But the control of the kick out is only so good as, and the accuracy and I suppose the completion of the kick out is only so good as the outfield movement and the outfield players. When you look at Evan Comerford for Dublin, he very rarely has to hit a kick out into a bunch of players. He generally just pops a kick out to a man who invariably you're kind of going, how has that guy got so much space? There's not an occasion where the player is generally under pressure. But yesterday, in a number of games over the weekend, but especially on Patton's one, he kicked a short kick out to a guy who was coming directly at him, which is always a very, very tricky thing to do because he has no angle. The defender, he's literally running back at you. So his thing is he has to first of all gather the ball, which they didn't do. If you remember the second one, he spilled the ball and left the opportunity. But if you have your back to the play, i.e. you're facing the goalkeeper, you don't know necessarily what's coming left or right of you. As soon as you turn, you get hit, and you're up for grabs. So from an Armagh point of view, they executed it perfectly. They literally saw him, they knew the opportunity, they said, right, we squeeze in here, as soon as he turns we nab him, we tried to turn him over and we put pressure on him. If he had gone back to Patton, they would have been right on Patton as well. The strange thing was, I suppose, that he did it a second time, after getting away with the first one. I would have just said, right, I'm putting this down and I'm just going 60-70 metres with this because we got out of jail on that one, so let's just get it out of here. And that was the one that I think caused obviously the angst. Probably the players necessarily themselves weren't really expecting it, because I can't remember who fumbled it, but I think it was a full-back who came running in at him. But yeah, a little bit of a kind of it's small margins, but as I say, the problem wasn't even necessarily that. The problem was Donegal, they can't change their pattern. When they go behind, they're kind of consistently doing the slow build-up play. They're looking for the runners. And you were kind of just saying, listen, they're beating Dockett. After 25, like literally after that goal and not there long after, you were just saying, there's no way they're getting back into this game because they don't have that forward prowess anymore. McBurty is struggling.
Could they refine that, though, is the thing? Because it seems that there's like a really good young generation of footballer there, but if they want to get over the line one more time, they kind of need to do it with McBurty and Murphy still playing. And it feels like it feels like the time might be up at this point, but there could be one last squeeze next season.
But I think they need to alter their style of play.
Yeah,
like the game has moved on now, I think, and risk takers more often than not, by taking a risk in the game, you get fruition. You get the result. The very first goal for Armagh was a risk. Most fellas would have just taken that ball on a short little pass, or as we've seen in the past, hold on to possession, go backwards with a kick. Whereas the intent was there straight away. That wasn't him he just looked up, he knew, he said, right, if we get this ball, probably even from the throw up without a free, we're going in there first time. And you can see that now in lots of teams. If you watch that intent, even from throw ups, the way fellas win it, they don't go back anymore, they try to go forward. So you can see teams that are taking risks, calculated risks, I would assess. They're not just pinging balls from all over the place, but they're doing it at times. And it happened in the Kildare Mayo game a few times. Remember one where Flynn cut the ball in. It was a lovely floated pass into him. I think the game I don't see that from Donegal at all. And it's not like they don't have the players, but I just think they're hamstrung massively by the pattern that they play in. And it needs to change for them to be successful again.
It certainly seems that way. You mentioned Kildare, you mentioned Mayo there. Mayo.
What is Mayo's pattern of play?
Well, it's you know what, they're an amazing team. I know people are heaping praise on Keegan, and rightly so, but Mullen was absolutely, I thought, was just as imperious. They're the funniest team to watch attack, because their full back line attack more than their half forward line attack. The 2-3-4 generally bypass the midfield and bypass the half forward line. And if you look at any of them, even the goal, You know, I think O'Hara had come on, and O'Hara slips the pass into Mullen, right? So, and not far from around there, Hessian is around it. Like, they're all in around that space. And actually, they had to do it because the forwards for Mayo were struggling, to be honest. It was a very strange game. I think Kildare will absolutely kick themselves. I think Kildare got an awful lot of stuff right. You know, the intensity that they were both tackling, the intensity of their tracking players. We spoke about this after the Dublin game, and the fact that they were just at 6s and 7s. Fellas weren't doing their jobs, fellas weren't following players, and effectively they gifted those 5 goals to Dublin. Whereas I thought on the weekend they were much better, much more on it. And where people were heaping praise on their forward prowess, I think the forwards let them down. You know, the forwards at vital times, people would say about shot selection. But the thing about shot selection is, if you're 2 points up or 3 points up and it's around 50 minutes gone, and Mayo are coming at you, and you manage to break out of that, if the shot isn't on and it's a 50-50 shot, you can't take it, because by taking it you give the kick out straight away to Mayo, and they just come back at you. By slowing it down, by recycling, by maybe just probing again for literally another minute and a half or 2 minutes, it gives everyone a bit of a breather in your team, and it allows you potentially go at them, and it gets them set, and it gets you set. By Flynn, Jimmy Hyland, Cribben, these lads taking long range shots and them going wide,
constantly to the left of the post.
Yeah,
like that shot just happened repetitively.
Is that just I don't want to say, because you're talking about very established and experienced players there, but actual experience of top level football. They've had one season in Division 1, that they're not used to having to make those sort of decisions, because, you know, Division 2 are, you know, the majority of Leinster games, you get away with that sort of stuff.
Correct. And I think, look, what happens is you do a few and they come off, right? So they're coming off in the first, so you think, I can continue to do this, you know, but they will, I think Kildare will absolutely feel, although the measure of the thing, someone will look at the result and say, no, Kildare were massively in that game, right? And I think Mayo will count themselves very lucky. Horan, I think, managed the bench much better than Glenn Ryan did, and I think that as well comes to experience. You know, he knew when to bring on pace around the middle. I thought O'Callaghan was gone in the middle of the field. The fellow ran himself into it. He did an unbelievable amount of work, and he was a busted flush at about 55-60 minutes. They needed some energy in there, and I just think the shot selection, the lack of energy down the stretch, that ability to close out the game and strangle it and just give your players a bit of a break, and then we face a kick out. And I think that heaped an awful lot of pressure on their goalkeeper, and again they didn't have the same energy to get into spaces. So the goalkeeper, because actually, to be fair to Skye, you could see an awful lot of the kick outs from behind, and I was looking going, there's nowhere obvious for him to kick this. You know, he just has to put it into an area, and invariably Mayo were winning those. But like, look, on the flip side, Mayo, you know, again, the attitude of them to continue to go, their self-belief, and their substitutes made a big difference. You know, Boland came on, kicked a couple of rakers. Nearly every one of them had a contribution to make, which is what you want. And I don't just mean like a small, like a pretty big contribution to make. And you know, down the stretch from 60 minutes on, I think they outscored Kildare 1-3 to a point, which is pretty savage.
Back to Nathan's earlier question about what is Mayo's style of play, what is their plan?
Yeah, I kind of avoided that, really.
What I'm interested in is, like, do we expect them to have something up their sleeve for this All-Ireland quarter-final? Because if they approach that quarter-final the exact same way as the league final, we know what the outcome will be. It kind of feels that if they approach this game the same way as the Kildare game as well, we know what the outcome will be. It feels that something has to be planned, some sort of defensive system has to be implemented that we haven't seen so far this year from Mayo for them to get to an All-Ireland semi-final.
I think they're smart enough and they're on the road long enough and they have enough belief in themselves that they can alter it, right? And I think they have the personnel to do that. So I would not be at all surprised that O'Shea kind of starts at 11 and goes into that double 6 role, right, that he did during the league. So he goes in there as
but not for the final, obviously. They didn't really implement a double 6 at all.
But I think they, you know, Flynn. I'm not sure, but I think, like, I mean, I was surprised. He must have been injured, okay, because, you know, he had a powerful league, and I think he did get injured at one stage. So it's good to see him back. To be so happy that he got 10 or 15 minutes into his legs. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes in, because they'll need that mobile midfield against Kerry. They will, absolutely. But I think they will protect, and I think what they'll decide is, looking at Cork against Kerry, they'll say, right, we need to just put an X as much as we can on Clifford, and then we fix it up. So they didn't go which was surprisingly so. They didn't go, as you say, with that double six against Kerry in the league. So was he kind of looking and saying, you never know, we will meet these again later down the year. We don't want to show them all our cards. Because it was a kind of a thing, if you remember then, where it was Mullen against Clifford, and he handled them well enough, but eventually, Clifford got away from him, and there's the ones where Mullen was kind of jawing at him and stuff like that. But,
O'Hora.
Oh, sorry, O'Hora. Yeah.
But Mullen was on him for a section of the earlier game in Tralee.
Yes.
And you could say that I know it's a smaller pitch, worse conditions and all that, but it worked out better for Mayo that day.
I can see them. Look, as I said, they've got the personnel. They certainly have the personnel. And what they do, and what Kerry don't particularly like to do, is they attack from that full back line. So Clifford will find himself a lot of the time running back down the pitch. So he will, and it will happen. And if they feel that they need to go, Keegan, Mullen, O'Hora, whoever it is, Hessian, whoever it is back in there, Durkin, McLaughlin, they will go. So they will test you both on to use the rugby parlance, both sides of the ball. They will test you from defending, and they'll test you, see how much fortitude you have to go back the other way. Now Kerry have changed that in the last year or so. You can definitely see that they're willing to roll up the socks and get back and work. But to constantly do it and to constantly switch it around, that's where I think Mayo will look to do. And I think they will position someone like an O'Shea in that central area just to stop those easy balls in front of the D. I'd say he'd be just said, listen, that's where you sit. I don't really care. Get it, and when we get it, then you come out, you burst out, you take a few hits. O'Shea's a funny individual in the sense of he's like one of those kind of machines you see where the flies get attracted to it and die. Fellas come at him to hit him, and invariably they end up in the ground, but he gets the little hand passes away, and people don't think he's doing much, but actually, by the fact that he's moving and he attracts players, he sucks guys in and then he just slips hand passes. His hands are very, very good, and he's very, very good at that. So that's where I think they will try to find some joy against Kerry.
It's obviously an incredibly exciting draw for Mayo to get to share the pitch with this all-conquering Kerry side, and we will have a guard of honour for David Clifford at Crow Park on what looks like Sunday week.
At the very least.
But all the focus ahead of the game is going to be on who marks Clifford. You're talking there about maybe stopping the supply more to Clifford, but they are going to have to man-mark him, and he took O'Hora apart. So it's too deep for Lee Keegan to go back. Presumably Keegan goes on Sean O'Shea. Do you put Mullen on him again?
I think it's a bit of a I think there's a committee maybe. I think O'Hora, Mullen are your obvious choices, but I think there's definitely, like where you say he took him apart, I think he took him apart in different circumstances where there was an awful lot of room in front of him and he could go left, right. The supply of the pressure on the ball coming in, as a defender, that makes a massive difference. It gives you the opportunity to get a hand in or to push a guy where you need to push him. If the player out the field is able to get his head up and spray balls left and right to someone like Clifford, you're in big trouble. And it doesn't really make a difference how many players you have back there. So I think the supply, pressure on the supply, plus someone like an O'Shea, as I say, in that area. It's not even that. Okay, so people say, well, O'Shea isn't the quickest guy, but it's not even about that. It's about him covering an area. So you then as a defender know if it comes there, he'll be there. So I now can concentrate on this side of Clifford. So I can go right, he can go left. If it comes long and high across, well, then we can both shift across. But that's more about it. It's more about angles with him rather than actually covering him off. I wouldn't put O'Shea, I wouldn't double up on him. Because what that does is it just, now there's two players gone, and what Clifford would be smart enough to do is there's so much potency elsewhere that he'll just take those two players out of the game and Kerry will have a straight line through on goal. So leave O'Shea there, or whoever it is, more than likely it could be him, in that central area, and then go man to man on Clifford.
We do have a couple of weeks to build up to that, and I'm sure there will be plenty of preview next week before those quarterfinals. Clare are going to be in the quarterfinals as well, Anthony, and I think everybody wanted them to not get a Kerry or Dublin in the quarterfinals to give them a chance of actually, or just stop playing Kerry for once in a big game, in a game that will define their season. Do they have a chance against Derry in this quarterfinal on the evidence of Saturday?
It's hard. It was a fantastic game. I think over the weekend, the Mayo Kildare game was kind of riddled with an awful lot of mistakes and stuff, but it was still quite exciting. But there was some great games. There was some great games, and I think it puts a lot of kind of faith back in Gaelic football, and it shows the idea of this risk taking, as I say. Clare had an unbelievable amount of energy. Like, I've never seen the amount of energy that they had in that first 45-50 minutes. But I think Roscommon, kind of a la Kildare, will be absolutely kicking themselves. Like, I'd say they'll be kind of sitting back there today kind of going, how did we lose that game from the position we were in? You know, how did we actually, you know, hand that over? So I think there was two things that happened. I think Roscommon came good at a vital time in the match to go 3 up, and then I think they thought, job done, you know, we'll just see this out. And instead of pushing up on Clare, really squeezing them, because I think Clare were at loss at that stage. Podge Collins hit a speculative wide. They looked a beaten docket. The energy levels were low, and I thought Roscommon could have really, you know, put the hammer on them, and they didn't. And that allowed the door just to be slightly open. And to be fair, they have, you know, Sexton in the full forward line was absolutely brilliant, and you know, a lot of different players around who stood up, and they got to look at the, you know, the rub of the green at certain times, and they made it what it was. But their energy levels are fantastic. The way they come and run at pace at you, they picked off some great. So, like, some of the kicking in that first half was just absolutely brilliant. Some of the point taking on both sides was fantastic. So I think they'll go in with confidence. I think it is a bit of a stretch too far, because they won't really, although they have played obviously Derry in Division 2 in the league, this is a different animal, and it's going to be interesting to see, can Derry replicate their style of play in Croke Park? Can they, you know, tighten things up as much as they can up north, in the sense of make it very, very difficult for you, and then look to break? Because
they're being favourites as well. They've been underdogs in pretty much all their games so far.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, and I think they'll be surprised with not surprised, but I think they'll be. It'll be remiss of them not to kind of tip the hat to Clare's energy, as I say, Clare's pace, Clare's ability to run at you, Clare's ability to kick scores from all angles. They run at very, very good angles. They're very, very confident in their kicking. But it is. I think it's going to be a step too far, to be honest with you, for Clare. I just think Derry will have probably enough in them. I think Derry now have had a bit of a break. They've probably reset the clock. They've given guys that needed a break, and I think they'll come back and they'll probably say to themselves, we'll keep it tight, and then when we break, we can do massive damage down the far end field. So I think it's going to be a brilliant game again, and I think both sides will come out to play in that game.
For sure. Just one last thing we wanted to get your take on before we wrapped up is the situation in Meath. We had Andy McEntee in studio with us on Friday for his exit interview after leaving his post as Meath boss. One person who's not going to be succeeding him in the job is Colin O'Rourke. He was asked about it on the Sunday game yesterday, and he says, no, not for me. Who is the guy that you want to see?
Oh, that's the $1 million question.
You see him when you look in the mirror in the morning.
Yeah, that's the question.
Oh, Jesus. No, I think it's you know, I think for the Meath job, for any inter-county job, I think there has to be a willingness to put your life on hold for that period of time. And Andy alluded to that obviously during the interview, and everyone knows that. But I don't think people really understand, you know, what exactly that means. It is a 24/7 type of situation. And I think you nearly have to be passionate about it, but you also have to be able to leave it kind of at the door when you come in, if you know what I mean. There has to be a break from it. And I think you can get consumed by it. Meath supporters are, you know, they're very simple, I think, to on the majority to, you know, kind of appease, because you just need effort and you need commitment. So, you know, you can go into a game, and if a Meath fan will see a player literally busting a gut and, you know, diving on the ball and doing what they can to win the game, even if they win it or not, they will be happy. And that's something that has always been there. So, you know, I know I alluded to this a couple of weeks ago. The players themselves and the players in the county who are available, they need to get back to brass tack. They need to get back to that ability of character and what it takes to actually put on the jersey. And I don't just mean that in kind of, that's a simple thing to throw out, but what it means to actually get to those levels. You can be conditioned, you can be trained with the best trainers, you can have the best skill sets, all those different things, but that thing needs to be found, whatever that is. And when we look at these 8 teams that are left, all of those teams have that, some more so than others. But you talk about Clare players had that at the weekend. Like, I mean, they went to some areas that they didn't want to go. They could have easily petered out in that game, but they found a character to keep going. So, you know, I think Andy's situation is strange. I think the county board thing is a very, very odd situation, because the move against them last year at the start of the year was odd. You know, I think there was a lot of pressure that came from the whole Bernard Flynn thing that happened in the under-20s, which I think was ridiculous, really, to be honest with you, because if you remember at the time, Flynn resigned as manager of it, and there was this kind of accusation that because certain players weren't made available for the under-20s, or were rather, should I say, were superseded by the seniors, which is the way it should be. You know, even if you're an under-20, if you're on the senior panel should get first dibs. So I think that caused more pressure to be heaped on Andy and his management team. And unfortunately, players are just, you know, they're human. And what happens is, if they get a sense or a smell that, well, actually this guy and these fellas might not be here, and it mightn't be the same gig next year, whether they're making a decision themselves, it just slips back. They maybe go from 5th gear to 4th gear, or at those vital times, as I say, it's just not there. I don't know why. Maybe it's human nature. You know, I played under managers, you know, fortunately or unfortunately during my career, where, you know, kind of as a bunch of players, you said, well, actually it's our head on the chopping block too. Like, we are the players, we're the people who are out there on the pitch, and you have to have the character and the will to say, no matter what's going on the sideline or behind the scenes, we're going to actually do it on the pitch. We're going to try to raise the standards. So I think regardless of who gets the job, I think there's a body of work to be done there. I think the county board have to back a person. There can't be any shred of doubt that this person hasn't got their backing for 2 or 3 years or whatever it is, or even a year, and that there has to be a willingness to get the whole county behind them. Much the same as the whole county is behind the Meath ladies. You know, you can see the ferocity of the support for the Meath ladies, which is fantastic. And everything feeds off itself. You know, what's on the pitch feeds off what's off the pitch, and it all becomes very, very harmonious. But if you don't have that, if there's a split at all in that, you can deny it for a period of time, which probably Andy and his management team did, but eventually it just seeps back through the cracks, and unfortunately that's what happened.
It has to have an impact. Like, does that put off people from wanting the job? Like,
well, I think so. Like, I akin it to, you know, you go in to be, say, the CEO of a company, and your board of directors above are split on whether they want you or not. Would anyone take that job? No, I wouldn't. So you go in, and the only reason you will go in to become the main man and the CEO of that company will be that the board of directors are fully behind you, and they're all saying, we're all pointing towards the North Star, we're all going to get this done, whatever that is. And like, this fanciful idea is, that's an All-Ireland. Well, no, it's not. What is it at the start? What is success? Like, I mean, is it a small thing that we're going to just say, right, we're going to perform, and our performances are going to be at a level in it? We may not win those games, but it's going to be at a level. And if we keep getting those performances, which I would imagine some team like Derry did, you know, they played it. If we keep getting those performances and we build and we build and we build, well, then eventually we may get to Croke Park in an All-Ireland quarter-final. And here they are.
So is it that man in the mirror when you wake up in the morning? At any stage, maybe not next year, at some point down the line?
You lads keep me too busy for that stuff.
Come on. Get off the fence.
So you're saying there's no chance?
No.
Anthony, great stuff. Thanks, Willie, for popping in this morning.
Cheers, lads.
Appreciate
Thanks.
it. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. We're back tomorrow morning from 7:30. Ashton will be in studio with myself, and we'll be joined by Tyrone goalkeeper Niall Morgan reviewing their county's season. Phil Egan will be in studio to preview Ireland against Ukraine, and we'll have much more besides. Right now we're leaving you with football journalist David Sneyd and his review of Stephen Kenny's side's emphatic win against Scotland in Dublin at the weekend. Enjoy. See you tomorrow.
Commentary for us yesterday here on Off the Ball. Michael Obafemi, as you might imagine, was pretty happy post-match. He caught up with Nathan and was talking about his goal amongst other things.
Yeah, I mean, obviously got the win, got a goal and assist. I feel like the fans are happy. I'm happy, the team's happy, so yeah, that's the main thing.
I've been coming here for, I think, 13 years since the stadium first opened. That's the best goal that's ever been scored in the stadium.
Really?
I think so.
I don't mind it. I'll take that.
Talk us through it.
Obviously, Troy played me the ball. Just thought I'd open up and just give it a go. Do you know what I mean? And thankfully, it went in little chicken dipper, but yeah, it was good.
Is that the sort of goal you score every day in training?
Nah, I wouldn't say so, but to be fair, I did hit a similar one in training during the week, so I kind of knew it was coming.
Yeah, a little chicken dipper, little swerver, little rocket, whatever you want to call it. So Obafemi with an amazing strike and an amazing performance, it must be said. Stephen Kenny was asked then if this was the best win, the best performance of his tenure.
I'd really thought about that, but you know, it was the players are terrific. You know, I suppose the situation was that we went into this game after having, you know, real setbacks this week, having lost the game. So, and we ended up conceding, you know, not really conceding any chances in the previous two games, but today we did concede a couple of chances and Scotland didn't take them. And we took ours, we capitalised on ours, and I think that was important. And once we got the first goal, the crowd really got behind us, and they really inspired the players, and the players fed off the energy of that and scored two and could have had more, but scored another two. But you know, any sort of victory over Scotland was a big win because they've been, you know, a terrific team over the last couple of years. Since Steve Clarke was appointed, so we're just pleased to get the win.
Yeah, and it ticks a lot of boxes for Stephen Kenny. For Ireland, the first competitive home win since June 2019, which is hard to believe, and it's the biggest win over a team ranked above Ireland since 1989, and just a first win against a team ranked above Ireland since that Bosnia game in 2015. So for Stephen Kenny, it eases the pressure that was building this week and the scrutiny which was building this week. Certainly David Sneyd was at the Aviva Stadium, is with us now. Hi David.
How's it going, Joe? Afternoon.
So that was much needed, to say the least. Give us your overall take on the Irish performance then.
Yeah, the first thing that came to my mind was I was thinking that Michael Obafemi, he might have had like a happy meal on his mind, because when he was describing his link-up play for Troy Parrott, he said he wanted to put it on his nugget. So between that and the chicken dippers, so you that kind of gives a bit of food for thought, I suppose. But it was a strange one. I don't know. Like, it felt a bit strange in the sense that up until the first goal, I thought Ireland seemed a bit nervy. Like, they made reference to the fact that they gave away that chance for John McGinn from the goal kick when Shane Duffy tried to play it out, and John McGinn should have scored. And then even then, just before the second goal, which again led to the goal kick, which Ireland then got that second goal from. Again, carbon copy of it, and they gave it away again. And it felt as if at that point that it looked as if it was going to be a bit of a nervy game, a bit of a scrappy game. And then just in the build-up, I just looked back at it this morning, just to kind of get a sense of it. But in the build-up to the first goal, and I thought obviously the first goal comes from a set piece, but considering that they had been under a bit of pressure in terms of that early pressure from Scotland and giving the ball away, the goal comes from Ireland keeping the ball, moving the ball quickly, and not just going along with it and then working it wide. And then McLean, which was a factor of the game for the whole game, either set pieces or in free play, his delivery was spot on. And Scotland, I think it might have been Hanley, just got a little glancing header that took it away from Obafemi, which led to the corner. But that kind of, I think that part in the play kind of, I think, spoke well to the team in terms of they didn't. I was thinking this could get nervy, this could get very scrappy, and Scotland could maybe sense a bit of blood, similar to what Armenia did, especially in the second half, where Armenia were basically just were able to shape up against Ireland and control the game by just defending really well. And I thought maybe Scotland were going to have the capability to do that. But then the goals came at crucial moments, and it was just it felt like a really dominant display then after that in terms of how Ireland played. And you referenced it there, talking about that Bosnia game. But even going back to that, like in that Bosnia game, I remember being there covering it, like Ireland dominated that game, just how they played, you know what I mean? And this felt like the first time in a while that's how Ireland, that they did it. And they did it just by having a fair bit of aggression about their play, which I think Jason Malumbi summed up, you know?
Completely. It was Malumbi in there was a totally different energy about Ireland, totally different level of aggression. And sometimes you wonder if we're so fixated on playing good football, quote unquote, that we forget how good we are when it comes to making life a bit more miserable for the opposition. And too often Stephen Kenny's teams have maybe been so focused on doing, quote unquote, again, the right things and playing progressive football, that they've forgotten the value of what Molumby brought to the team. And to be fair, what all of them brought to the team, there was a different energy about the whole side.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with Molumby, like I kind of made a bit of a reference to it just in my own preview stuff to it. Like, he couldn't have been out of the team for the last little while, but I was surprised that he maybe hadn't got a bit more of a look in the previous 2 games, purely because he's been playing regular football for West Brom. And like, when he got his new contract, when he got his contract was made permanent there at West Brom, obviously he signed, he had been on loan from Brighton. And like, speaking to people at West Brom about him, like the attitude that he has, like they literally nearly have to send him home from training, that he's just constantly on lads, and he has that mentality around the place, and that was as a lone player, and he's the same character in around that Ireland team. And I just think, like what you say there, sometimes like I think players just feed off that, the crowd can feed off that. And a game, not even just in a game against Scotland, but in any game, you need that little bit of snarl in that midfield, a little, like, who has that. And he's beginning to find a bit of a discipline to his game, as well as having that, where there was times where maybe he could follow the ball a bit much, or maybe get dragged out of position and stuff. But they're kind of now elements of his game, because he's 22 years old, still learning really. But they're elements of his game that have progressed through playing regular football. And it was a point even Stephen Kenny made talking about Michael Obafemi, just not his all-round play and playing regularly. The fact that he's been able to put a number of games together, that's why I thought, and it's a fair criticism to have in terms of managing players' minutes, that could have happened in the Ukraine game rather than going with a very similar team. And it just shone through. And like, that's the third goal. Like, the third goal just summed that up, even in terms of Alan Brown anticipating the breaking ball and coming in from that kind of, he was around the halfway line, but coming into that position and getting stuck into a tackle. Then Billy Gilmore shoves Alan Brown off the ball, and it was almost as if Jason Molumby was offended that his mate got bullied off the ball, and he smashed, not even so much smashes in, but again, he anticipates where the ball has got, where it's going to go. And he doesn't have to foul, because he's already read where the ball could break, and he can get in for the tackle. And then the goal then obviously is just sensational that comes from that. But it just kind of had that sense in the ground. That's where Ireland were able to have that control, because Scotland players ended up getting booed off the pitch by their fans. And the journalists in the press conference afterwards asking Steve Clark questions about their team and the manner of that performance. But I think that owed as much as anything to just the intensity levels that Ireland brought to it, because I think Scotland had more of the ball.
Yeah. For Kenny, it's a very good afternoon as well. He was asked afterwards about any tactical switches, and he said, well, look, we did go from 3-4-3 to, well, he said 5-3-2 is what he said. But the core point is that extra body in midfield. Jason Knight, out of possession, to be fair, was still getting forward and popping up maybe on that inside left channel a lot. But certainly when Ireland didn't have the ball, it felt a lot less like, geez, Josh Cullen, best of luck, mate, you're on your own. Jeff Hendricks somewhere else, and you're there to deal with whatever fire needs to be put out. It felt very much like Cullen surrounded by Molumby and Knight out of possession, and Ireland just had better shape, better distances between the players, weren't as easy to play through, because again, against Ukraine, it was worryingly easy how quickly Ukraine could routinely go from back to front in possession.
And very simply as well, and they were able to do it very quickly, as you said. And even Armenia, go back to the goal that Armenia scored, where it was Josh Cullen playing the ball into Michael Obafemi, and it's a bad touch, and straight away Armenia were able to turn it over and have a shot on goal relatively quickly, because there was no pressure on the ball. And like, if you're looking at it, it's kind of like at the very start of this campaign, like even Stephen Kenny spoke with the fact that like there's not going to be maybe that need for experimenting that was done. But obviously there's still some new players that come in, like Obafemi is someone who Kenny wanted to have in for that Lithuania, for the friendly with Lithuania, and obviously some of the circumstances around that, where obviously he was still feeling his way back into full fitness really, and trying to string games together. But the point being, and it's what Ireland need to do, is having a bit of that cohesion, because for as much as we talk about everything else, I think that was the first time I felt that they had that. Yeah. Like in other games, like in the last 2 games, despite having a relatively decent start, and especially even against Ukraine, you kind of felt, you know what, they started well, they're going to have a bit of a reaction. But that lack of cohesion kind of had shone through in the previous games, because just wilted in the games and became so disjointed. But that wasn't a factor yesterday at all. It was just really impressive how they done it. And like, it comes back to it, like, it almost feels as if you're almost looking for that magic formula all the time for how Ireland should play, or how are they going to get the best out of it. But in terms of what that midfield brings, like, I think that just sums up. And with Jason, like, as you say, being able to drop back in, and like the work he does, and just the understanding he has of that role, because it's something that Jamie McGrath, who's now not in the squad, had done very well previously when he made his debut against Portugal away in Faro. Like, that performance was brilliant from him, because that's what he was doing. I think that's definitely in that position where Ireland have it. That's the kind of player that Ireland need, in terms of someone who can maybe link up a little bit with, if it's going to be a front two, and then drop back in, because it's clearly they're just not good enough to not be able to have that extra bit of support in there.
Totally. And like, Josh Cullen brings a lot of things, and I'd be a big fan of Cullen, but he doesn't get across the ground super quickly and put players under pressure. Hendrick similarly. And so you do, like, Malumbi was a big addition in that respect. Now, Hendrick's been very, very good for Ireland, so you'd be low to just say, well, that's him done. But certainly with Malumbi in there snapping at people, and with Knight in there as an extra body, a bit like you, I'm wary of saying, we found the formula, because the same formula is not going to work against different opposition. And Armenia pose a very different challenge to Ukraine and to Scotland. So, like, the management will have to keep evolving things as the challenge requires. But certainly that sense of midfield having a bit more bite in it, and a bit more mobility, and that extra body in there, I don't suspect management will get too far away from that over the coming months.
No, I don't. But even just with Hendrick, I think what would work, because he has been good, and this is the thing, and you mentioned Josh Cullen as well, and there could be a sense maybe when he hasn't got maybe that player in beside him who has that ability to cover his ground for him and do that donkey work. Because listen, like, still need, like, for teams like Ireland, you still need that. You need that balance. You need fellas in there who are willing to maybe do an extra bit of running. And it's not that Cullen shirks that, but his strengths lie in different areas, and if he's dragged and maybe being demanded to do something else, it's going to take away different elements of his game. And for Hendrick, like, I think maybe he even in that night role, he kind of would work better further up, because he hasn't got that mobility. I don't think, and it's not, listen, he's only 30 years of age. It's not as if he's past that and can't do that. But I just think he's at the stage where he has that ability to play a pass. Like, he was the one, again, going back to it in Armenia, especially in the first half, he was able to tread a pass. He did it against Ukraine as well. So if you're trying to say, well, how do you get the pest out of him, which I think has been a question that we've almost been asking with Jeff Hendrick for about 7 years in an Ireland jersey, it does seem as if taking him out of the cut and trust of that in the battling in midfield would be necessary. But then you'll also, if you look back on some of the games before this campaign, one of the standout things has been with Hendrick has actually been his link-up play and his kind of understanding with Matt Doherty on that right-hand side. And obviously Doherty hasn't been here, and that's been a big thing, because Doherty just gives Ireland a major outlet, even providing, like, going forward and stepping into midfield a little on occasion. So, like, as you say, like, there's going to be different formulas for different games, and it's just about finding the right balance in the games. And that's when you need your management and you need your coaching staff to be able to say, well, this is what's needed and this is what's required, and hoping that in the games where they choose at different moments that it pays off. Because, like, the nature of it, you're not going to be able to rely on just 11 players, 12 players, or whatever. It's fellas coming in out of form, being injured. Like, there's international football by almost design. It does always seem as if there has to be an element of chop and change, just because when the games come, and being able to mix it up and being able to have different personnel for different situations and scenarios is just so crucial for a team like Ireland.
No, for sure. What's going to be crucial is getting the wing-backs question right. And McLean, for all the misgivings people might have, he brings a lot of energy, brings a lot of intent, he brings an urgency, and his quality is often underrated. And we saw the quality, that right-footed cross, which led to the corner for the first goal, for instance. That's where, on so many occasions, for all the talk of tactics and systems, ultimately, if the players don't deliver moments of quality and have good first touches and put passes together, and when they get a chance to put in a good cross, then all the tactical innovation is going to count for nothing. And he did that, and he does do that. And with this system, the wing backs are essential. They have to have big games. They have to deliver when they get a chance to deliver. So has he forced his way back into the reckoning? Where is Enda Stevens, who has flattered to deceive a touch at times? Do we look at Coleman and Doherty once again and say to Doherty, we know you don't like it out there on the left, but you're going out there because you can do a good job out there. That area would be worth nailing down.
No, absolutely. But in terms of just on the left-hand side, McLean, absolutely, I would say, just in terms of more so the quality that he brought yesterday, and it was quite telling the fact that in the previous two games, Josh Cullen was on all the set pieces effectively, whereas McLean was the one who took over that. And as I mentioned at the start, he was the one who put that really good cross when he came in, just that led to the corner for the first goal. Enda Stevens is a tricky one because it's tough for him. He's just been plagued by injury the last little while. He got in there and he's played for a little bit of Sheffield United, but he's had really bad time of it with injury. But he is a player who Stephen Kenny really likes, and on his day, he can be a really effective player in that position because it's a role that doesn't require any real thought for him because he's done it for so long. But again, what we're coming back to, and we're talking about, say, bringing that maybe just a bit of an edge. McLean does bring that, but again, it's just going to be tempering it a little bit because especially in a window like this, the squad is key because obviously the 4 games in 10 days. Again, it just makes you think that possibly it could have been freshened up for the Ukraine game, and a lot of maybe the pressure that had built could have maybe been eased if Ireland had a bit more intensity and aggression in their play and been able to sustain it against Ukraine. They could have got a result in that game. Now the fact is they were able to deliver it yesterday, and the point you make, and you said it there, and it's just so simple, but you can't get away from it, is Ireland just had a bit more quality and class in that final third than Scotland. Like Scotland had their chances. Scotland could have been 1-up before Ireland scored. McGeehan has a really tame shot at the edge of the box, and then, as I said before, just that led to the goal kick that led to Ireland's second goal. He misses an almost carbon copy sitter as well. Like Scotland did have their chances that were gifted by Ireland, but then when Ireland's came and just having those moments like the Obafemi, the turn and the touch and the turn, and then the pass for Troy Parrott's goal. And Troy Parrott, like there's time that he was on his backside of having won the header or won the kind of knockdown for Obafemi, and then 6 seconds later he's putting the ball in the net, not leaving that, because he has that bit of intent. He's not just lays it off and he takes a bit of time to get up. He kind of had that urgency, kind of felt as if maybe he had that little bit of maybe bit of a kick up the backside himself, having been dropped because maybe not having the best of games out in Armenia. And it's just what Ireland provided. It was just, again, something that hadn't been there even in previous games, was proper runners into the box as well for that goal, like an option. And just like you saw it, like the Scottish defender, I think it was the right wing back, was it Ralston, he just part of blitzed by him, and he's obviously trying to, he's kind of passing them on, he's trying to give information, but by the time he's doing it, the centre back, which again was Hanley, the ball's over his head. Like when you're playing just in front of the lads and giving them the time to just get set, it's easy to defend against. But when you have those, sometimes like a runner into the box, it just provides a threat. And that coming back into the wing back section, I was talking about that's where that's important as well, because you can get at lads that get at teams that way and get into spaces that way. And they hadn't done it in the previous games, and they kind of did it yesterday, which was quite good.
Totally agree. The lack of runners against Armenia, who admittedly were deep, so it's harder, but against Ukraine as well. There were no runners in behind against Ukraine, and you're thinking, how easy is this for the opposition? And any team in the world would find that Obafemi Troy Parrott goal difficult to defend. That is nightmare stuff. It's brilliantly timed run in behind, and it was interesting. I presume you watched it back then, the RTE coverage. Ray Houghton, a few times in advance of the Parrott goal, did say if there was one complaint about Parrott, he wants to come short all the time. And it's because he's such a good player, and it's like, give me a touch, I want a touch, I just want to be involved in the game. And you kind of have to allow players like that who like being involved, get involved. But that just showed the value of a run in behind. And